to call the January 9 meeting of the Frankfort Franklin County Planning Commission to order and say to everyone that I see out there, welcome. We're glad that you're able to spend some time with us this evening to attend to the public's business. And I'm hopeful that everyone will have an opportunity to either express for themselves or that someone else might express your sentiment as it relates to whichever item it is that you came here to hear or speak on. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Ms. Catherine Bennett?
Here.
David Boggs?
Here.
Patty Cross? Joyce Honaker? Keith Lee?
Here.
Timothy Lusher?
Here.
Jim Nickel? Charles Stewart? Jim Terrell?
Present.
Russell Wright? Sharon Jackson?
Here.
So we've got a quorum with 6.
Okay. Did everyone receive the November minutes?
Yes, sir.
If so, the chair will entertain a motion to approve or receive suggestions for modifications.
Chair, I motion to approve. Minutes.
Move properly second to approve the minutes from the November 14, 2019 meeting. Are there questions on the motion? Are there questions on the motion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion regarding the payment of bills.
Mr. Chairman, make a
Mr.
motion
Lee.
that we approve the payment of bills on the amended agenda that was received tonight.
Second.
Move properly second that the bills as presented on the amended agenda be approved for payment. We have proper second. Is there a question on the motion? Question on the motion. Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Motion carried. Are there reports of officers? See none. Reports of standing committees.
Good evening, Commission. Mr. Chairman, we have a vacancy on the Joint Land Use Study Committee that was a Planning Commission appointment previously held by Mr. Joe Sanderson. I would request that the Commission appoint someone to fill that vacancy.
There you go. I like that better.
We will, if she will accept, appoint Ms. Catherine Bennett to represent the Planning Commission on the Jailers Committee.
I will
Okay.
graciously accept, sir. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Is the, while you're there, is there a meeting of the ordinance update, zoning ordinance update committee?
Yes, sir, I believe that is scheduled for the,
Next Thursday.
it is next Thursday. It'll be the 16th, 5 p.m., located here at City Hall in this room.
Thank you, sir.
There is one, to my knowledge, there's one item on the agenda specific to small cell tower regulations for both the city and the county.
Okay. So if commission members would take note of that, and members of the public who wish to attend and have your opinions heard, take note of that as well. Zoning ordinance update will meet on January 16,
Yes, sir.
5 p.m.
Yes, sir, 5 p.m.
At the county or here?
City Hall, here.
City Hall.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Reports from special select committees. Special orders. I need to establish a nominating committee. We typically elect new officers at this time of the year. Mr. Lee, would you mind chairing the nominating committee?
I can do that, yes, sir.
I'm going to give you a member who's not here. I'm going to put Ms. Cross to work,
That'd be fine.
and I want to put Mr. Stewart to work.
That'd be fine.
Those are your committee members, and if you would bring a slate of officers to us in
Yes, ma'am.
February.
I'll be there.
The second item, there is at the November meeting, we had a brief conversation, not a complete conversation, but a brief conversation around establishing a oversight committee to begin the process of updating the comprehensive plan. And rather than make those appointments this evening, I think I'll wait until the February meeting and make those appointments. So for those of you commissioners here, please answer when I call, because I'm going to be calling to find out whether or not you are willing to serve and where you're willing to serve. And I don't want to appoint you without your permission. Okay? I also believe that under special orders, we were asked in November to be prepared to approve payment of the D&O insurance for commissioners. And did you all get the bill? Did you pay the bill? Or how do we need to do that, Robert?
The bill is being paid. Your account will reflect the deposits from the invoicing of your member payments to both the city and the county. So it's being, that payment's being made, and it's all working out. You're in good standing.
So for us to be legal and legitimate on this, we just need a motion to pay the D&O insurance.
I thought that you had already done that at the previous meeting.
I didn't
but
see it in the minutes.
That's fine. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind do it again, then I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to pay the insurance.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and properly second that the commission authorize the payment of the D&O insurance. Are there questions on the motion? Questions on the motion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. We're protected. Thank you very much. And then, under staff items, there's a presentation of the meeting calendar for 2020. Everyone should have received one of those. Look like this.
This right here.
Yeah, I've got it at the office. I think I brought that
Yes,
I have
sir.
extra if anyone needs them.
Rob, yeah.
You like one?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, that's mine on the wall of the office.
As we've done for the last many years, there will be no December Planning Commission meeting. Other than that, the schedules are pretty standard. Quarterly meetings for the committees, and then the once-a-month meetings for the three boards.
The meeting dates, if you note, are the traditional meeting dates that have been attributable to the Planning Commission for years and years. They're not being modified or changed. So unless there's an objection from a member of the commission, we'll allow the meeting date and the calendar to stand as offered by staff. Am I permitted to do that, Mr. Legal Counsel?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you are.
All right. We'll want to ask the secretary to call the first item on the agenda.
This is called a public hearing under Kentucky Revised Statute 100.211 for Tyranny Storage LLC is requesting approval of a zone map amendment from Agricultural District AG to Industrial General District IG for 85.388 acre portion of property located in Franklin County, identified as a portion of Tract 1, 84.058 acres, and a portion of Tract 2, 1.331 acres, located at 690 Duncan Road. The property is more specifically identified as a portion of PVA map number 087-00-00-031.00, Tract 1, and a portion of PVA map number 087-00-00-031.01, Tract 2, and this is a county item.
Madam Secretary, would you please, well, you've got a list. So we'll ask anyone here who intends to speak for or against the item that we're about to review to please come forward and sign the list, please. About time, you think, huh?
Yeah, happy 2020.
Well, we're going to discuss that with the legal counsel here in just a minute.
Because I would have to leave at 7:15 to pick up my daughter, and I have
10:15?
7:15.
Oh, we need to
okay.
get you in first. What's your name? I'm sorry.
Chris Schimmer. And I'm presenting on behalf of Envision, so I have to.
Okay.
Miss Julia, how are you? Good to see you. I'm just fine, man.
Hi, Julia Jane. How are you doing? It's been a very long time since I've seen you.
I've been laying low.
Well, there you go.
Sign it. Five. Look at that. Jane, how are you?
Wow. I'll just call your name.
Yeah, all right.
probably shouldn't have come.
Anything goes on in the county. Jane. Junior farm.
And you'll just, yes.
Say I decline. You serve the candidates. Say ditto. Do that.
Same for me. I'm not sure.
So they said that, that I should ask you.
Well, we're gonna talk about whether,
Because, I mean, if I were just an individual, but I'm representing Envision Franklin County, so I feel the responsibility
her up to the
get my
top of
comments
this.
submitted, and they're just handwritten, they're not. So I want to verbally say. Okay. Okay, so if I start going like this, so I see. I get it.
we take care of it. What is this, man? What is this?
I don't want to say anything.
Don't sign.
I say nothing. Sometimes fewer words the better, right? There you go.
I'm gonna miss dinner. I'm gonna miss dinner.
Instead of this.
I know there's gonna be some that I'm not gonna be able to
I was
read.
just thinking, I know this name, and I couldn't read it.
Each one of them got 30 minutes.
Funny. We'll see you tomorrow.
Has everyone who wished to speak or believed that they need to speak signed the sheet? And I'm asking the question because that sheet is going to serve as the basis of the process as we go through this. You don't get a chance to come and sign in the middle of the process. And I'm not trying to be ugly to anyone. I just want to put the rules on the floor before we begin. We'll ask the secretary, since nobody got up to come, to go ahead and swear in the participants.
If you signed the sign-in sheet, please stand up and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you.
Now, before we begin, there's one little piece that we need to do, and I'm going to need the assistance of our legal counsel to do that. There's, how many people signed in? Okay, so we basically have 20 individuals signed up to speak either for or against the agenda item, so that no one loses an opportunity to speak. We need to set a time limit for each speaker, except for the staff and the representative of the applicant. So I'm going to see if we can establish a reasonable time frame for each speaker that's signed up to speak for or against to be able to present his or her position on the agenda item. Among commissioners, do you have any preference? Typically, we limit individuals to 3 to 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I think 5 minutes is adequate for this.
Any objection? Okay. Mr. Logan?
Yes.
5 to 20.
5 minutes appear to be the,
We have somebody objecting in the crowd.
No, it doesn't.
they don't have a vote,
They can't. Yeah.
uh,
They can't.
to be our determination that at a maximum, we'll give each individual 5 minutes. Yes?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I have a statement that I want to read into the record, so it's 4 pages, but it won't take that long, but it'll probably take more than 5 minutes. So if Mr. Logan, I don't know if you could, sort of be a little compromising on that time limit, I sure would appreciate it.
Ms. Julian, we might be able to address your issue without having to create special rules for you. Give me just a moment. Now, of the individuals who signed this piece of paper, are you represented by legal counsel or some other individual who is speaking for a group? Do you know? For example, homeowners association, if you are part of a homeowners association, is there someone from the association who's speaking on behalf of all of the homeowners in that association? Or have you gotten an attorney to speak on your behalf? I'm asking for information. I'm not telling you you have to do that. Please.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Susan Goddard, and we do have legal representation, but I will be speaking on behalf of the group. I'm a director for the Duncan Road Hilltop Meadows Association. And actually, I was going to be going over 5 minutes too, because I have the bulk of the information for the group. So
We'll work with him.
okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Ms. Julian?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, since this is the only item on the agenda, I think it would be great if everybody who wants to speak could speak. And this first public hearing is the only time that you take testimony. So I think this is people's only chance to speak out. So I'd say, we've got till 10:30 tonight. I'd say let everybody go ahead and speak. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that commentary, Ms. Julian, but at the moment, the commission say you have 5 minutes. And so we'll work around that. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is C.L. Watts. I'm a magistrate from Woodford County, and I'll be speaking for myself and the county judge.
You signed here?
I pray that it won't go over 5 minutes.
We'll be praying for you.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm the legal counsel for the applicant. I signed up, but.
We did not, but if you noticed on the front end, I said, staff and the applicant are not limited by the 5-minute rule.
I'll be speaking for Kentucky Capital Development Corporation, but I promise I will speak 5 minutes.
Thank you. So, Mr. Logan, in our attempt to be fair with everyone, would you mind monitoring the time and as you hear us say or do something that's inappropriate, remind us? Please, sir. I have full faith and confidence, sir. Now, when you speak, we do expect you to say whatever it is that you want to say. However, when we ask for questions, we expect you to ask questions on the subject matter before us. We don't need you to make a speech before you ask your question. I do understand about context and questions. But we've been around the block a few times, and we know when people are using the context of a question to try and make a speech. I have it. I don't mind using it. Are there any other ground rules that I need to establish with the legal counsel?
Not that I have in mind.
Thank you. Madam Secretary? Let's see, staff goes first.
That's right.
Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commission. My name is Robert Hewitt. I'm the Director of Planning and Building Codes for Franklin County. As the Secretary indicated, this is a zone change request for a portion of a larger piece of property. This is an interesting tract of land because it actually straddles the line between Franklin County and Woodford County. That's why the narrative references portions of both Track 1 and Track 2. I want you to rest assured that what we've advertised is properly noticed for the Franklin County area, and that the per KRS, as you'll see within your packet, Woodford County Planning Commission was also properly noticed by my office. The applicant is requesting a zone change request from its existing agricultural zoning classification to an IG, industrial general classification. Surrounding zoning within Franklin County to the subject property is IG to the north, east, and west. To the south, which is Woodford County, it's an A1, which is an agricultural designation. This property is on Duncan Road, which is a state route. It's also known as the Blanton Crutcher Farm, which consisted of a large two-story brick home and then several agricultural buildings. The brick home was raised in the fall of 2019. The property was purchased by the applicant in July of 2019.
Mr. Hewitt, before you begin your summary, just a couple of technical things. In the packet was a letter from an attorney that represents the people out on Duncan Road that raised questions about the completeness of the application. Did you and your staff have an opportunity to review the application to determine whether or not those inquiries have been satisfied? For example, there was the inquiry of having a proper land survey, etc. Have you all looked at that and ensured that the quote-unquote letter of the law have been adhered to as the application was submitted?
Yes, I have. The survey has been stamped and submitted to my office. It is included in your packet along with the legal description of the portion of the property for Franklin County only. Mr. Chairman, before I proceed any further, I'd like to be qualified by your legal counsel just as a matter of business.
Mr. Hewitt, you stated your name and your position with Franklin County. How long have you been living in the Franklin County area?
13 years.
And what is your training, education, experience in the field?
Bachelor of Science from University of Kentucky, with an emphasis in city and regional planning, member of the American Planning Association as well as the Kentucky chapter of the American Planning Association, qualified stormwater inspector as well.
Do you have a current vita or resume that's been prepared?
Yes.
And has that been submitted to the commission for their review?
Yes, sir.
Have you reviewed the request or the application for the zone map amendment?
Yes.
And did you review that in the context of your position with County of Franklin?
Yes.
Did you prepare a staff report as a result of your review and analysis of the application?
Yes.
And has that staff report been reduced to writing and filed with the commission this evening?
Yes.
Are there any additions or deletions to that staff report?
Yes, I have additions to the staff report that I would like to introduce into the record during my summary of the report.
Do you have those with you at this time?
Yes.
Well, I would move that you file the staff report and any additions that you have at this point in time with this record.
All right.
Specifically, Is there a traffic study that's been performed, a traffic impact study?
Yes, so we can begin with that one. There is a traffic study that is in your staff report that was mailed to you. There was a recent revision to that report. I received it last evening, and I would like to submit that into the record for all members of the commission this evening.
High time reading there.
Mr. Brad Johnson with H&B Engineers is your contract engineer for traffic studies. He was unable to attend this evening, so Ms. Lindsay Walker with H&B will be representing your interest in the traffic study and is prepared to testify to that this evening. She has reviewed the traffic study as revised and is prepared for testimony.
Could you briefly indicate the findings within your staff report and your recommendation analysis?
Yes. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Just needed to find out, did the applicant receive a copy of the updated traffic study?
The applicant's traffic engineer provided it to me. Yes.
Thank you.
Did you in fact sign the report, submit that as a recommendation?
Yes, I did.
What is your basic recommendation on this?
I recommend approval of the request.
And is that based upon the analysis that's contained in the staff?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move the staff report as well as the traffic study be filed into the record, and that the witness be turned over for question.
So ordered. Mr. Hewitt, if you will go ahead and do your summary. I think you addressed the question of the completeness of the application. So if you'll go ahead, we'll be fine.
Thank you. On page 3 of your staff report, I have included the statute necessary for this planning commission to make a recommendation specific to the applicant's request to the fiscal court, and I'd like to read that into the record at this time. Before any map amendment is granted, the planning commission or legislative body or fiscal court must find that the map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan, or in the absence of such a finding, that one more of the following apply. A, that the existing zoning classification given to the property is inappropriate, that the proposed zoning classification is appropriate, or B, there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved which were not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan and which have substantially altered the basic character of such area. On page 4 of that staff report, the following page, I've included the language from the current 2016 adopted comprehensive plan, which identifies the subject property's future land use designation as an employment center. As I reviewed back through the commission's adopted plans, which I would now like to enter into the record, the previous comprehensive plan dated 2010 also identifies the property as employment center. Dating back prior to that plan in 2001, the property was identified as Commerce Center. While the name of the designation changed, the language within each category did not. So that being said, your comprehensive plan shows for the last 19 years that this property has been designated by this commission and adopted by the fiscal court for use as light industrial property. I'd like to enter those documents into the record at this time. Yes. I have placed numerous maps within your staff report. I would like, and unfortunately, those several of those were very small and ended up being just black and white copies. I would like to just bring your attention to goal number 3 within the staff report, identified as use infrastructure as a planning tool. The subsequent maps identify, as noted in the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority's online mapping, that both water and sewer is available to this property and actually along its property boundaries. One of the map, which is a drinking water map, which is located on page 9, at the top of the page 9 of the report, shows a 24-inch water main running along the west property line and a 12-inch water main running along the east property line parallel to Duncan Road. The map located on page 8 of your report is a wastewater map, which depicts an 8-inch sewer main running along the western portion of the property. Through the process of a facility review that I submitted out to all the utility companies, which also included traffic engineer as well as the fire chief, not only are electric and telecommunication services available and will be served to this property under the existing tariffs, but fire protection is also provided by virtue of the water mains adjacent to the property. So I'm happy to enter these two images into the record for your review, since they are in color. I only had one copy of those, so I apologize. At least we could enter those into the record after the committee's reviewed them. Stormwater is always a big issue whenever new development occurs in property where it's not happened before, because that would mean that there's no existing infrastructure. This property does lie at the headwaters of Slickway Branch. And as everyone knows, Slickway Branch runs parallel to Duncan Road, runs next to the new DHL facility off Leestown Road, goes through the country club, and ultimately connects with Elkhorn Creek. So on page 11 of your report, I do have the flood insurance rate map for Franklin County. I did include the panel number, which is 137. The property does not have a designated flood hazard area shown on the property. However, Franklin County and my office specifically, along with the county engineer and elected officials, have identified Slickway Branch as a sensitive area. Emergency management responds several times throughout the year for water overtopping the road. So in discussions with the applicant, we've advised them that if development is authorized to commence on the property, that we will be requesting that they work closely with us to ensure that we can improve the situation out there as much as feasible to minimize any risk to the motoring public. Also on page 11 at the bottom right of the page, I've included the MS4 area, which is the municipal separate storm sewer system jurisdictional map. The property actually falls outside of that boundary area, but the applicant has been working with staff to include erosion control measures and filing appropriate documentation for any land disturbance activities. One of your larger fold-out maps, just after the photographs, referenced in the report is figure 1.1. That map identifies the location of the subject property, but more specifically, it designates the property as being within the suburban development area of your subdivision and development plan regulations. That means that they are subject to the development standards as if this were developing in the city. So there are no rule standards that would be applied to this. It would be treated as though it's on Versailles Road or any other major corridor that would be subject to any kind of commercial or industrial activity. So even though it's a farm now, it would be treated as though it's a standard development. So in that case, back specific to infrastructure as a planning tool, the concept plan that's included in this not only shows an access to Duncan Road, it also shows access and a connection into Industrial Park Number 3, of which this property is adjacent to. That's important because in the suburban development areas, when you exceed 150,001 square feet, you become a Type C development, which then requires 2 access points into the transportation network. So the concept plan recognizes the requirement that they provide that, and it appears that they are able to comply with that requirement if granted approval for development. In the report, I've also included the application. I've included a copy of the survey along with the legal description specific to Franklin County. The concept plan is located just past the legal description and prior to the meeting notification. That image is an aerial image on an 11 by 17 piece of paper showing 4 potential building locations and 2 streets. The streets are outlined in red. I would like to conclude with the statement that I have provided proposed findings of fact located on page 14 of the staff report. There are 6 findings listed there, and I have recommended approval of the applicant's request. I just want to state again, I would like my testimony and report, as well as supplemental documents entered into the record, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. On the first page of the staff report under background, it states the farmhouse known as the Crutcher House was raised in the fall 2019. I just wanted for the record, as far as an AG designation, which the property is right now, they are within their rights to do modifications on AG. That's not illegal, or that's not a problem, right?
Correct. They could exercise an agricultural exemption at any time.
Okay. I just want to point that out to the committee and to the audience that, you know, that whether you agree or disagree with raising a house, it was perfectly legal, and that's not what we're here for tonight. We're here for a zone amendment change. So that's my question. Thank you, sir.
Any other commissioner?
Actually, Mr. Hewitt, what other modifications have been made to this property prior to this application?
The existing farm entrance has been improved slightly. There has been a culvert added to the existing transportation cabinets culvert. Okay. And then barriers have been added and a new gate.
Were these modifications made with your staff's approval? Or?
No, sir. I don't regulate entrances on state roads. The transportation cabinet does that.
Do you know if that's been approved?
I do not know if that's been approved. In discussions with the transportation cabinet, only until the use of the property changes will an encroachment permit be required for a modification to an existing entrance.
It leads to the question, to follow up with Mr. Lee, is that while things may be appropriate and legal prior to this application, there were modifications made to this property that seem to be, while under that designation, may be influential to our decision tonight.
You can weigh that as you deem appropriate.
So.
Was it my understanding that the capacity for the additional sewage and water lines are there and can be connected to without, it's all there?
Yes, sir, that's correct. The reference to a main extension by the Frankfort Sewer Department is only as a result of the distance necessary to connect to the main. As I said in the report, the policy of the Frankfort Sewer Department is any extension greater than 150 feet to the main is considered a main extension, which then requires an agreement and contract with the Frankfort City Commission and approval of the Division of Water for sanitary sewer plants.
Other questions by commissioner?
I do have another question. You mentioned, just kind of follow up with the comments that have been made by Mr. Lush and Mr. Lee. talking about, you said, yes, they are exempt when you're talking about the agricultural zoning. What are they exempt from in regards to the property that you're discussing?
Agricultural properties are allowed to request an exemption to the building code and to the plumbing code.
So I know.
And then stormwater, they file their own separate stormwater management plan with agriculture.
So I want to get this straight. As it's currently zoned with the property and the structures that are on the property at this time, I believe that's going to be a bulk of some of the discussion that we're going to have tonight is in regards to these structures in and of itself. In the agriculture zoning, as it is right now, is there anything protecting those structures at this point in time?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't know what you protect from. I don't understand the question.
Maybe if I throw out a hypothetical, is there say there's a historical significance to these, hypothetically, there's a historical significance. Does did it have to be zoned to something else to protect these structures? I don't know if I'm phrasing that right.
I follow you now. I do. The home that I referenced on page 1, the Crutcher house that was raised in the fall of last year, was listed on the National Register of the Historic Places. By virtue of that registration, this does not provide protection, federal protection or local protection or otherwise, to that structure. It's an honorary designation. In my direct conversation with the director of the Kentucky Heritage Council, I was advised that that does not provide protection to a structure. There are no local Franklin County zoning ordinances or any other regulation that would protect or recognize a historic structure and protect it from demolition in any form at this time.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need.
Yes.
Are there other questions by Commissioner?
Actually, yes, I'd like to follow up with that, if you don't mind, please. While there not being any zoning regulations to protect the historic structure, I do believe under our master plan that is a goal in multiple locations to protect the heritage and the historic value of Franklin County. Is that correct?
It is stated, yes, in the goals.
Okay.
Yes.
So I just want that record entered in the record that we do, as Franklin County, have a provision to protect our heritage.
I believe the word is recognize.
Recognize? Okay. Sorry, Mr. Hewitt, is under Goal 6, preserve historic buildings and neighborhoods to maintain community character. So I believe the word is preserve.
Well, specifically to this case that we're hearing tonight, this is not a neighborhood.
I agree. But it's historic buildings and neighborhoods, not in neighborhoods.
Noted.
Further questions?
That's it. Good.
Mr. Hewitt, in the current comprehensive plan, we know that the industrial parks indicated that there was a need for additional acreage for developmental purposes. Do you recall how many acres were included in our comprehensive plan as being needed?
No, sir. I could look that up and come back to the commission if you would like.
Well,
Our book's not.
let's move past that one for just a moment and ask whether or not the request for the 85 acres fall within what might have been the projected need, or does it fall outside of that projected need, to your knowledge?
Without looking at the comprehensive plan, I can't answer that at this time. I would like to reference back to my staff report. In the last 2 pages of that document, there is a letter from the executive director of the Kentucky Kentucky Capital Development Corporation,
Right.
who clearly states that there is a shortage of available industrial property and that this is desperately needed. And I believe that individual has signed up to testify this evening.
Okay, that really becomes the root of my question. Just saying that there's a need doesn't say whether or not the 85 is within or outside of the projected number. So we'll ask that person that question.
Well, the Kentucky Capital Development Corporation is the joint city-county agency who markets the industrial properties and who solicits industry to this community. And I think they would be the appropriate body to answer where we stand on that today as opposed to where we were in 2016. Because I believe that she will testify that there has been a lot of sales in the industrial park and that they manage for the city and the county.
Okay. Does the applicant have questions of staff?
Mr. Hewitt, are the facts contained in your report, are they true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
And are the conclusions that you reach in your report, are they based upon your knowledge, your experience, your investigation of the application, your consideration of all the ordinances in Franklin County and the statutes in the state of Kentucky? And are they based upon those, that type of inquiry?
Yes.
Okay, sir,
Yes.
I've gotten an indication that you need to get closer to the mic so that
I can do that,
can
you
be
know.
recorded.
Here before some judges
State his
today.
name for the record.
And
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm John Rumpf. I'm attorney from Winchester, Kentucky. I began through. And I represent the applicant Tierney Storage Inc. There is on page 18, I think, of your report, there's a diagram. Does that diagram have any significance to you as a professional planner?
Yes, sir, it does. This image is from the Franklin County zoning map. I have identified the subject property as 690 Duncan Road and its current zoning classification of agriculture, labeled AG, and the surrounding properties within Franklin County, which, as you can see, the page is full with industrial general classifications with some professional office in the back of the industrial park 3 and extending out to the west to rural residential along Hanley Lane.
And does this fit right with your testimony concerning what your comprehensive plan committees have done since 1991 in their assessment of a proper use of this property within the comprehensive plan?
2001 is when it converted to,
I mean,
to the
90. Did you tell me 90?
2001 is when the property went to a commerce center designation. So it's been 19 years that this body has recognized that. So,
And that was after several reviews?
yes.
Yes. And as a professional planner, I know in your reports you draw attention to this, but what significance is it that this property has water, sewer, fire protection, police protection, easy access to major roadways? What significance to that can you draw from those types of things in terms of a planner, a land use plan?
That the future land use designation is appropriate and that this land is suitable for industrial development.
I think that's all the questions I have. Oh, I just want to make sure that his report has been marked in all the exhibits that he introduced today, and he made a part of his testimony and will be part of the record in the case. Request the chairman to just acknowledge that.
it's been acknowledged, and if it wasn't clear, speak to my legal counsel, and
Okay.
legal counsel to legal counsel, I'm sure you could get some clarity.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there members of the audience who signed up to speak, who have questions of staff? Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Just real quick,
If you'll get closer to the mic and state your name and address, sir.
C.L. Watts, did I understand you to testify that there was a new traffic study that was done?
Yes.
Okay, this, the old report I've got, this says, as a part of our assessment, we review and recently completed Frankfort Small Urban Area Study. In this study, US 60/I-64 interchange was recommended to be upgraded. Is that in the new one?
No, so that's a separate study that the Planning Commission commissioned that was prepared by the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet.
Does it pertain to this?
It was considered in the assessment, and I believe the Planning Commission's traffic engineer, as well as the applicants, could testify to how much weight they placed on that study to their analysis.
Well, I was going to ask, are they going to change the intersection?
That's what's proposed, yes. They are proposing a major widening of that between the north and southbound on-ramps.
Y'all going to be able to start that February 1?
It ain't us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
2030.
Yes, sir.
My name's Richard Rose, and I live in downtown Frankfort. I have a question for Mr. Hewitt. In your staff report, under Goal 7, it says promote quality development that strengthens community character and pride. Currently, you and I interpret that clause differently. I look at it as a member of this community. I would take more pride in a beautiful home that's located on the National Register of Historic Places than I would take in an industrial warehouse. Can you explain to me why you feel a warehouse
Mr. Hewitt, before you
Yes, sir.
Before you answer that question, I don't believe that was appropriate. I believe that was more commentary at this point in time, asking for your subjective opinion, and this is, I would defer to you, Mr. Logan, but asking for the subjective opinion, the subjective interpretation based on that, I don't believe is appropriate for staff. Staff was here to provide the report. Let me finish, sir. Staff was here to provide the report. He provided the report, but asking him to elaborate on his subjective opinion, I believe Mr. Rosen is well within his right to express his opinion, but asking staff to elaborate and to explain why he feels a certain way personally, which is essentially a personal question, asking him, I don't believe is appropriate at this time.
The nature of Goal 7 is subjective. I'm asking for his subjective opinion. I think that's fair.
With regard to the question he asked, the witness can answer yes or no, whether he thinks his subjective approach is different from the question. The question was obviously made to present a point rather than presenting a question. I do agree.
Thank you.
So should staff answer or not?
That's up to staff.
Okay. That's all I need.
I think I will answer.
Let's go.
As I stated in my report, that this development has the potential of providing additional jobs, new businesses, and an increased tax base. This can provide more money for our local schools, provide money for parks, and for cultural amenities for all the residents of Frankfort and Franklin County. So I still stand behind those statements.
Are there other questions?
Yes.
Not?
Yes.
Yes, Susan.
Mr. Hewitt, I would like to know, do you have your comprehensive plan with you tonight? And, because there is something in here, there is currently over 600 acres of property available zoned for industrial uses in Franklin County. Comp plan at page 12. There is enough commercially industrial zone land to accommodate more than 5 times the projected demand for each use. Comp plan at page 14. There is no need to expand industrial uses on property already properly zoned for agriculture.
Do you have your source and citation for that? Which comp plan are you referring to?
The 2016 comp plan? Or is it 2010? 2010, excuse me.
And could you recite your figures, please?
Yes, sir. There's currently over 600 acres of property available zoned for industrial uses in Franklin County. Comp plan at page 12. There is also enough commercially and industrial zoned land to accommodate more than 5 times the projected demand for each use. Page 14.
Okay, well, your 2010 document is not consistent with the 2016 document. Once again, as I've stated before, I believe it's important that since the director of the city-county economic development group is here and signed in to testify, that they discuss the sales transaction and real estate trends that support their position as stated in their letter attached to my report.
Any other questions, Ms. Goddard?
I do have one other question. Mr. Otis, in his letter as the county engineer, had listed several things about the road congestion that he was concerned, and that from this point forward, that this applicant as well as future applicants would be put on notice for water retention and the problems with water.
Mm-hmm.
From looking at the property, it appears to me, there's a couple of things that I'd like to know about. First of all, Mr. Tierney owns the front lot there and has built a huge warehouse. It appears that he has redirected the water from the back of the warehouse onto the private property that he owns as a farm currently. That water has then been going under the road and through the road. It's actually caused problems, and on top of the road. So Mr. Eaton from Transportation Cabinet has sent people from the road department out to fix it, and the sheriff has had to clean it. Are there provisions, or what exactly is going on with, because when Industrial Park 3 was developed, it was our understanding as the neighbors that all the water, the stormwater runoff was going to go through a holding pond junction box series, and then it would slowly, because this is the head of the creek there and the watershed, that it would slowly be released. However, it appears that he has redirected his water to not do that, to not utilize what is in the industrial park. Is it acceptable for him to be able to redirect that water and not use the industrial park stormwater drainage system? Because it is causing problems for the neighbors and the road and tearing up the road. And flooding.
Okay, first of all, the sheriff doesn't clean the road. This is a state road. I was contacted by District 5 Transportation Cabinet specific to siltation within their existing culvert under Duncan Road. I did perform a site visit on the subject property of tonight's hearing, and I did notify the applicant and his civil engineer specific to erosion control measures. And while we're not talking about the adjacent property, I did notify the applicant, who also owns 101 Corporate Drive, of the need for installation of erosion control measures as well as stormwater detention that was approved through the development plan. So I don't have that development plan with me tonight, so if there's any further questions specific to 101 Corporate Drive, that'll have to be discussed at a later date.
Are there other questions? Seeing none, Mr. Hewitt, thank you.
I do have one other question. According to the National Register, there is a graveyard that is located, and I had contacted your all's office on numerous occasions. I put it in writing.
Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Do I need to?
Point of order, can you get a question instead of testimony?
Okay. Oh, okay, excuse me. Can you tell me whether or not that the graveyard has been located and whether Mr. Tierney has mowed over the graves, or what is going to be done with to recognize the people who are interred there, and what is the process for that? And if he has destroyed any of the graves, is that not a criminal act? And what is going to, I mean, I'm just asking because there are.
Well, I'm going to answer. We cannot make a determination on a criminal act. This is a zone map amendment. And if someone did something to a graveyard and there's a criminal act that's taking place, they need to be prosecuted, but we would not do that. That would be through the appropriate court system.
But would you have done a stop work order to Mr. Hewitt if you had understood or known that there was a grave, or would you be able to advise
Mr. Chairman,
them?
I would highlight, and what Mr. Logan, legal counsel, did. This is outside the purview of what Mr. Hewitt can testify to this time.
She has the right to ask the question. She has the right to answer that question.
And we have a right,
I think
we have a right to overrule that unless you're going to step up and make an appearance.
Well,
She's made the appearance, not you.
that's fine. But she still has rights to ask a question.
Then
And
she
he
needs to
has
ask
answered.
it, not you. Are you speaking for her? Are you
She did ask-
representing the attorney?
She did ask her. She did ask it.
I did.
Okay, maybe we can deal with that. The question that's being asked has to deal with the development of the property. That would come before this commission, or that issue would be answered or spoken to when the development plan, should the property be rezoned, come to the planning commission for its review. And even at that time, the level of discussion would be limited by the advice of our legal counsel. And I'm saying to you that Mr. Hewitt don't need to answer that question, because that's a development plan question, and we are now doing a conversation around a zone map amendment.
Are you directing this to me? Can I answer that?
Well, you're the one that's speaking.
May I respond?
No, sir.
Okay.
Next question, please. Hearing none, Mr. Hewitt. Thank you, sir. With the applicant, please come forward.
Again, I'm John Bromston. I'm from Winchester. I'm with White Buchanan Stewart, and I have, I guess, the pleasure of doing the zoning in Franklin County for the first time. I've been in many other counties. I appreciate your all's service. I can tell you I do a lot of this work, and there's no higher calling than either to be on the Planning Commission or on the Winchester Municipal Utility Commission. I think Mr. Hewitt has summarized an opening statement on this matter. Only thing I want to do is probably give you some idea of who's going to testify and what they're going to say. And my idea here is to keep it short and answer your questions. I'm going to ask some questions, but I hope they will, in their statements, will answer most of your questions, and if you have any other question, answer them. Mr. Tierney is going to testify. He's going to tell you about his knowledge and experience in this type of development. He's going to tell you about his plan for the property, and he will address any questions you have about the various matters I think we've heard tonight. Andy Lace is going to testify. He's a civil engineer that did the work on this project, did that conceptual plan, did and will do the stormwater detention information. He will design those types of things. Diane Zimmerman will testify. She is a professional engineer, a traffic engineer. She is the author of the report that you've got, the traffic analysis of this development. And then finally, Jared Stevens, who did the survey, will testify. But I'll say this, he'll only testify if there's some issue he needs to testify about. I don't want to take your time about something about those questions. So without further ado, I'd like to call Mr. Tierney to testify. He's already under oath and will present our case.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Could you state your name, please?
Yes, I'm Ron Tierney,
And Mr. Tierney, how old are you?
71.
And where do you live?
I live at 20 Redbud Lane in Winchester, Kentucky.
Tell the commission a little bit about your professional life and your experience in the area of development.
I've been involved in the construction business since I graduated from Morehead State University in '70. We have developed several properties, commercial properties in Winchester, 28 to 30 buildings, in Frankfort, 15 buildings, and in Lexington, 3 structures there.
And in this development, has it been similar to the proposed application in development? That is, putting in streets, extending sewers, making sure all utilities are available, as well as the construction of the buildings?
Yes, we have. We've built streets, roads, sewer lines, and all in the Winchester facilities we have there, and the Lexington and in Frankfort.
Now, focusing in a little bit on Franklin County, what have you done in Franklin? You mentioned how many buildings?
15.
How many buildings have you been involved in the industrial park number 3 that's right adjacent to this property?
15.
15 in that,
Right.
in that
Right.
facility?
Yes.
What about out on Leestown Road?
We've got the one facility that used to be the Bendix facility, the 220,000 foot building there. We bought it in 2007, have cleaned it up, and we currently have it leased to TRG, the Recon Group.
I guess the reason you didn't mention that is you didn't build that building.
Right, I
You
didn't build
actually
it.
just operate that.
Right.
What is the operation of Tierney Storage? Are you some conglomerate out of somewhere, or is it a family-owned operation?
It's my son Patrick and Jeff Hurst, our Frankfort manager and partner. We work with various engineers, surveyors, and general construction people to do these projects.
So you and Patrick and Jeff handle the leasing of the operations,
Right.
the construction supervision, and things of that nature?
Correct.
And on some instances, do you actually do the construction with your crews?
Yes, we do mostly groundwork and that type of thing, and then we sub out the concrete and the building structures.
Okay, tell the commission why you chose this site, or how you got involved with this site.
We've developed all around 3 sides of it in the last 14 years, and we knew we had utilities right there, which are very important: water, sewer, gas, electric. We knew we could handle the way the water is with the water retention area with the big pond there that we've planned to expand, and then put additional retention facilities on that property.
Robert Hewitt mentioned the extension of the roadway from the industrial park number 3 into this property. Did you have to, you don't own that Fortune Drive extended, do you?
Yes, we've recently purchased the property where we can
Correct.
take that street.
I hand you a copy of the deed, it just happens to be dated today.
Right.
Did you actually close with Hayashi, the owner of that property?
Yes,
to
I
buy
did.
the roadway area on that, in order to extend the roadway as shown on that colored
Right.
development conceptual plan?
Where the driveway comes from Duncan Road and comes around, ties into Fortune Drive.
So you've actually now closed on that property?
Yes.
Would you make that deed a part of your testimony today, have it filed in the record? What do I do?
You need to tender that.
The comprehensive plan, we need verification of the comprehensive plan on this. Are you aware of what the map, the future land use map for the present Franklin County Frankfort comprehensive plan calls for the use of this property?
Yes, we worked on all of our projects in Frankfort, have been involved with the Economic Development Council, and we knew how that was zoned and that type of thing.
And
Or how it was
in
recommended.
fact, were you encouraged by the Economic Development Council to pursue this idea?
Yes, because we bought the last industrial lot in that existing park that was available.
So that, they don't have any more, the Industrial Authority doesn't have any more property available
No.
in that existing park?
No, I don't think so.
All of it's private, there are some vacant lots up there, but all of it's already been sold and just not
Right.
built on yet?
Yes.
What's your plan for development of the property?
I think in the first 3 years, there may be one building. We'll have probably part of it. Excuse me.
I hate to keep interrupting lawyers, but we are here on the zone map amendment, not how we're saying we may develop something in the future. And I would ask that we stick to the relevant issues of the zone map amendment.
Will the proposed use of this property that you propose to make under the Employment Center IG zoning, will it have any effect on the adjoining property?
It should not. We will not have lighting that's going to affect it. We've conformed with the traffic studies that have been made. It really shouldn't affect anything. We'll have to develop water retention systems that conform with Kentucky Department of Water.
Now, I hope I can address some of the issues that have been raised against it. Is that okay? Like the cemetery?
Go ahead.
Okay. When you bought this property, did you find a cemetery on it?
Yes.
How did you find the cemetery? Was it apparent?
No, it was the information was available in the documents we had before we ever looked at it.
Okay.
We used that, and then we got with the farm manager, Mr. Jim Moosey, and he was familiar with where that was located at, and he had managed that farm for 25 years or so, and he knew exactly where it was because he
Where
had,
the grave?
where the grave site
Is there
was.
one grave?
One grave site.
Okay.
And he moved it, he did not move the grave.
He moved what?
He moved the fence where
Mr.
the,
Chairman, at this point, I'm going to take back what I said. Whether or not someone moved that grave is not relevant to this.
Well,
Okay.
he moved the park.
But
Whether they moved the
but
marker is not relevant to this.
Well,
I think Mr. Logan's position is that whether a zone change is granted or not granted is not dependent upon whether that graveyard is there, intact, not intact, etc. Unless there's something else that you,
Can I just ask
no,
one
we
more
don't.
question? Will you handle any grave site on this property in accordance with the Kentucky Revised Statutes?
yes, I will. I've already looked into it.
And there's been a great deal of discussion about the house that was there. Did you raise that house?
Yes, we did
Did
raise
you make
that.
any inquiry about preservation of that house before you raised it?
Yes, we did.
Did you seek the advice of a professional restoration company?
Yes, we did have JWI Restoration out of Winchester, Kentucky, looked at it, recommended that it was not suitable for restoration, and our insurance company wouldn't allow us to keep it that way.
And did you, I think Mr. Hewitt's already handled that other issue. That's all I have. You might stay around though.
Oh, okay.
I think they might have some questions.
Mr. Logan, do you have any questions on behalf of staff of Mr. Tierney?
No, I do not.
Does,
Yep, I've got a question.
thank you.
My name's Evan Goddard. I live at 13 Den, Duncan Road. I've talked to you a few times, Mr. Tierney. The gravesite actually belongs to Miss Elizabeth Minor. The question I've got is, has anyone actually verified that the gravesite location is accurate? On the map, it says the gravesite as located by the owner. If you look at your site map, that's what it says. My question is, has that been verified by anyone other than the farm owner? the property.
The farm
Mr.
manager
Houston.
verified it with me, and he has been on that for 25 years, and he
I've been there
removed
for
it.
30.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, I don't know how to say this anymore, but that gravesite, nothing to do with zoning.
Thank you.
If a grave's been desecrated, somebody else is gonna prosecute that, not us.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know.
Ma'am, if you could kind of come closer to the mic and identify yourself, please, ma'am.
My name is Vivian Reardon. I live at 965 Duncan Road. I'm a Franklin County citizen. I pay taxes in Frankfort. I am one of the few houses that is in Franklin County. My question to you is, you saying you were not going to put you're not going to put lights up, or I live in a country. We built our house in '64. I've lived there 50-some years. I built my house for the country. We had Industrial One come in. We didn't know it was going to be there. Then we had the Democratic headquarters. We didn't know what that was going to be. Now we've got Industrial 2, Industrial 3, and we want to have an Industrial 4. I built my house for the country. My husband's gone. I'm a widow. I don't want to look out and see a football-sized building in my front yard. I want to see cows and hay.
Okay, now that's really testimony, ma'am. I'm really trying to be lenient. I am.
But he
But
says
you need
he's
to
not going
ask
to build
the
lights
question.
up.
Please.
So how are you going to do your buildings and keep the lights up for the people and not keep them shining on my house?
Have you been up in the industrial park?
Yes,
that
I
we
have.
You,
I see it every day.
okay.
I can see this humongous football-sized building from my front yard. And I really don't like it. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get emotional, but I have been there for 50 years. I plan on dying there. And I do not want to see this great big huge building when I look out my window. I'm sorry, that's just, what are you gonna do?
Build buildings, lady.
Sure, huge, humongous buildings. But why do you have to do it in my country view? There's places in Frankfort that are empty, that all kinds of people can move into. Why do it here?
Because this has the utilities and everything.
Because it
available
was
for
built that way. I was there when they built the lines. Mr. Davis was gonna put maybe a subdivision there.
Ma'am?
I'm sorry.
But you're doing testimony, and
Well,
we want
he's saying
to
he's
give
building
you a
buildings.
chance to do that, but it has to be later on in the meeting.
But he hasn't answered my question.
I
What's
think
he gonna
was-
do? How's he gonna light his buildings? He said he
Well,
was gonna
but-
put up lights.
Again, ma'am, the details about any construction, should the land be rezoned, would come at the point at which a development plan is submitted by the applicant or the proposal
So I
for
have a question.
construction of a facility, and then we'd be able to ask all of those questions at that time.
Okay. I'll just write the paper.
Sir, may I ask another question?
Yes.
The applicant? I have a question with, since
Okay,
you're.
Sue,
okay,
I'm
again,
sorry,
my
Ms.
name is
Goddard,
Susan
you need to
Goddard.
say who you
Susan
are.
Goddard.
Okay.
Mr. Tierney, since you are building directly next to Industrial Park 3, and you own several of those pieces of property, 15 pieces of parcels, okay, 15 parcels, is this now, your piece, is this now going to be under the umbrella and basically called Industrial Park 3?
No, ma'am, it is not.
Are you going to be under the same protective covenants and things? Are you going to
No,
have
ma'am.
protective
No,
covenants
ma'am,
for
it's
the
not.
neighbors?
No, ma'am, it's not.
Are you going to, or do you plan on having protective covenants for the neighbors, such as light and noise and sound and,
Yes, we have to
All
conform to
those things.
Kentucky standards.
okay, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Evan
And
Goddard,
then
you
her.
mentioned Kentucky standards for the light and noise pollution that you're currently causing. What are the Kentucky standards that you're going to follow to mitigate that pollution? Thank you.
We do what is, there's laws we have to abide by, and we abide by those. Robert Hewitt sees to that.
And what exactly are those laws? For the record, can we state that?
Such, lighting, we have to have lighting that's adequate for our operations. We do not put lights that are gonna face neighborhoods if they're not necessary unless the fire department requires them.
Can I ask one more question?
Well, now, this lady back here is,
I don't know if this is the appropriate time, I'm kind of getting confused back there, but Ms. Reardon
Would you
was talking about the...
state your
I'm
name?
sorry, Kim Gerhart, I live on Duncan Road. But since he has come out there, the lighting has gotten worse and worse, and he's not even getting close to our houses yet because of all the trees he's taken down. This is the new warehouse that he's
Ma'am,
put
you have a
up.
question? This is time for a question.
My question would be, are we going to get pine trees to where, like she said, we don't have to look at these buildings?
Transitional barriers.
that's,
Mr. Chairman, once
That's-
again, whether or not he's gonna plant what he
Yeah.
says he's gonna plant and what this commission requires him to plant may be two totally different things.
Yes.
But that is at the development plan stage and not at this stage. And he can't commit to it because we may require more if in fact it's even zoned.
Ma'am, are you,
Correct.
ma'am, are you wanting to enter those into the record? I just wanted to make sure because you were showing them to the, and I just want to make sure that you had the opportunity to admit them into the record if that was something that you were wanting to do.
Who don't?
Can we do that with
testimony,
the
right?
testimony if it's all right, so we keep the, I'd like to try and keep the record somewhat straight if we can.
I think that's appropriate. I just want to make sure she
Yeah,
knew she had the
when comes up to
opportunity.
test, she can submit those.
And I had one other question on the, that's,
Let's go, we're going to wait till her testimony,
if,
ma'am,
maybe it's not.
if you hope, okay, you're signed up to speak.
Yes, I did.
At the time that you speak, would you please provide the photographs and et cetera to the secretary so that the record can be remain clean?
Go ahead.
One last question, I'm sorry. You guys have both maps up there. I understand the aerial map and the, I guess, the schematic. I'm not sure what it's called, technical map maybe. Those two maps do not match. Which map are we going to be approving tonight?
None?
Mr. Tierney, did you obtain a land disturbance application or permit
Yes, for less than 1 acre, we don't have to have one, but
for
yes,
less
we
than
do.
1 acre?
But we did apply one,
Had you disturbed less than 1 acre?
yes.
You
At that
you swear
entryway-
and affirm
at-
right now
at
that
that
you have
entryway-
disturbed.
Hold on.
I'm just
Again,
asking
I'm
because,
I'm asking, Mr. What does the disturbance have to do with the zoning tonight?
Because if he's not following these current laws, how's he going to follow the new ones?
Well, we're not talking about following laws, we're talking about whether or not he even gets to build it in the first place.
Understood. Thank you, sir.
did you, and you did, it's made clear that you did not apply for a permit for the house to come down. But I do ask this because this is something that is relevant to a health situation, if I may.
Your Honor, what
is
is
it-
relevant to a health situation, we are not a health board.
Well,
If you're trying to
the-
build another case, do it in another forum. This is for the amendment, period.
So I cannot ask him if he tested the house for lead and asbestos before he tore it down?
No.
No, well, no, not on
Because
that.
neighbors were not notified.
Because that,
If-
well, but that
did you
has no
notify the
relevance.
neighbors? Pardon?
That has no relevance to whether you change the zone or not change the zone, or whether there's an economic,
I guess I asked this question is he a good steward in being a developer? To be able to follow that, is he following?
Once again, that's not relevant
Is he
either.
all, but, well, as a developer, is he getting all of the permits necessary? Because if he did not get a permit for land disturbance, or if he did not do something,
why was a stop work order not
Mr.
done?
Goddard,
Yes.
this is about, I've said it 5 times.
Okay.
That what you're asking has nothing to do with the zone map amendment, nothing.
Okay,
Is there another question?
well, there is one other. there is one
Mr.
other
Chairman,
question.
Mr. Chairman, at this,
Barriers?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Chairman, if I may, at this time, I'd make a motion to sustain Mr. Logan's objection to the questions regarding health. These are appropriate questions, but not for this forum and development. So I would make a motion at this point in time to sustain Mr. Logan's objection, which would
We don't-
effectively end the questioning.
We don't need a second. So order. Let's move on.
May I ask him if he was, did you have to obtain permission from either the fiscal court or planning and zoning or, I guess, planning and zoning or the industrial park in order to cut down all of the trees that were barriers as put in by fiscal court between, as a buffer between industrial parks and residents? Did you obtain permission or did you have to obtain permission?
Do not have to have permission.
You do not have to have permission to remove barriers, berms, and trees that were put in by the court?
Okay, but Ms. Goddard,
No,
he answered that, but during staff's presentation, staff said to us that no permissions were required in the agricultural zone to make modifications. That would include the trees. Are there other questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Chris Schimmeler. My question is, it's 5 after 7, and I would like to get to the testimony.
We're gonna get to you.
Okay, because I have to leave at 7:20 to pick up my car.
That's not our problem.
We're gonna get to you.
Okay.
Other questions? There being none. Thank you, Ms.
thank you.
Tierney. Now,
I'll call it guidance and
No, we got to call. Should we call Ms. Sherman first? Let her know.
that's a transportation. Thank you.
Would you state your name?
Diane Zimmerman,
And Ms. Zimmerman, what is your address?
12803 High Meadows Pike, Prospect, Kentucky 40059.
At my request, did you provide a resume?
Yes, I did.
A curriculum vitae?
Yes.
Would you make that part of your testimony?
Yes, I will.
today? Can you briefly, are you a professional engineer?
I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Kentucky. I hold a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from the University of Kentucky in 1986, and the resume shows 33 years of experience.
Do you have any particular area of interest in engineering?
I have specialized the last 25 years in traffic and transportation planning.
And at at the request of Andy Layson, I guess, Mr. Tierney's engineer, did you perform a traffic impact study regarding the proposed development of this site of land that's under consideration tonight?
Yes, I did.
And was that revised most effectively, as Mr. Hewitt said, on December the 8th, 2020?
The date's January 8th.
January 8th, I'm sorry.
But yes,
January.
it was revised.
And that has already been filed as part of the record?
Yes, sir.
Can you basically, well, first of all, just so the commission understands, this report has on the front December the 15th, 2019, and then it says revised January the 8th, 2020. What caused you to make that revision, and what parts, what caused you to make that revision?
As part of the approval process for the encroachment permit on Duncan Road, the Transportation Cabinet has a set of guidelines for their traffic impact study. Based on the review of Mr. Brian Eaton, he pointed out 5 errors.
Now Brian Eaton is
Brian Eaton is with the District 5. He's the permits engineer for Franklin County, meaning he reviews permits within Franklin County.
So Mr. Tierney is in the process of applying for a
Encroachment permit.
And as part of that process, he's required to have a traffic study as well.
Correct.
And this also is a part of the process with the commission. They require a
Correct.
traffic study, and that's why this is addressed to both the planning commission and the Kentucky Transportation.
That is correct.
So Mr. Eaton pointed out something to you when he got your December 15th, 2019 report.
Correct.
And, well, you said make some corrections or correct
Yes.
some errors.
Yes.
Were they substantive errors?
They were,
in the
they were not
conclusion?
substantial errors, and they did not change the conclusions.
Okay. The conclusion that was in your December the 15th report is the same then as the conclusions in the January 8th report.
That is correct.
Were I think in an email to me or to somebody, you referred to it as cosmetic, but there was some diagrams and some figures that needed to be changed
Correct.
in the document
Correct.
to comply with the present situation and the present traffic calculations and traffic counts. That's the word
Yes.
I'm looking for. Is
Yes,
that correct?
that is correct.
What was your conclusion?
The conclusion is that based upon the volume of traffic generated by this development and the amount of traffic forecasted for the year 2030, there will be minimal impact to the existing highway network with level services remaining within acceptable limits. The delays experienced in the area will increase within those acceptable limits. No improvements are recommended to achieve the acceptable level of service. The US 60 signal timings will need to be optimized in the future and coordinated with the improvement project the Transportation Cabinet has underway.
And as a general summary of the process that was met, can you give them a general summary of the process and what you do in order to get that conclusion?
Right. I collected traffic counts in August of 2019 at the intersections on US 60. The 3 intersections that were requested by the Transportation Cabinet, which were the 2 interchange as well as Duncan Road. And then additionally, I collected a traffic count at the intersection of Corporate Drive. I then tried to predict what the amount of traffic that will be on the road in 2030 without this development, and then add the trips that would be generated by this property as it develops. And then I do a 3 levels of analysis, one for today, one for 2030 without the development, one with 2030 with the development.
And all of that is part of your report?
Correct.
Together with the calculations and the...
Yes.
And
The actual data.
And the actual data that was used to reach your conclusion?
Yes, sir.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lee.
Mr. Chairman, this is on H&Bs, but what they're calculating 150 AM peak trips and 150 PM peak trips. How is that assumed, not knowing what these buildings will be doing and what they're having?
Well,
is that a worst case scenario or what? How does that work?
The Institute of Transportation Engineers publishes a document called the Trip Generation Manual.
Okay.
And we're on our 10th version of that document. And in the document, it has a land use called industrial park. And I estimated that 375,000 square feet could be in the buildings that have been shown schematically so far, that would amount to about 375,000 square feet. So that's, and I guess it could have been,
So
it could have
would that
been
be an
called.
average, or would that be high estimation, low estimation, or?
It
just what
it is an average. I think if it was to become warehousing or there are other uses within, and it may be important when you get to the development phase that you revisit that question.
Okay, understand. And because it does have 2 entrances and you don't know how it's set up, you have no idea how much percentage of traffic is going on one road or the other at this time, correct?
Yes, but it will all ultimately end up on Duncan Road. I mean,
Yeah.
the split
Comes in
between
one
the
way or
main
other.
entrance.
The 2 entrances go on where the eventual
Correct.
form to go to 60. Okay,
Correct.
that's my questions. Thank you.
Other questions by commissioners? Hearing none, seeing none. Does staff have a question of traffic engineer, Ms. Zimmerman?
No, sir.
Does anyone from the audience have a question of Ms. Zimmerman? If not, Ms. Zimmerman, thank you very much.
Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Zimmerman be excused? Can she be excused?
Yeah. Sure.
I mean, I'm just asking if she can be excused.
Sure.
She's not held under.
All right, well,
I don't believe she'd be subject to recall.
Now, is he finished?
Okay.
Georgetown wanted me to.
I guess he's done. We're gonna call, I'm sorry. Are you finished?
No.
Oh, well, who else do you have?
Andy Lyson, that's it. Andy
Okay,
Lyson's the engineer.
well, where is he?
Right behind me, I think. Would you state your name, please?
Yeah, I can introduce, but my name's Andy Layson. My license, I live 3430 Jones Lane in Frankfort, in the Schweitzer area. I'm a registered professional engineer, licensed professional engineer. Graduated from the University of Kentucky in 1989. Been performing transportation development, civil engineering work for 31 years.
Did you work on this with the Tierney?
Yes.
Did you assist with its application process and coordination of the various elements here, the traffic and surveying and all of that?
Yes, sir.
And are you the author of that conceptual plan that's shown, the green?
Yes.
This is a reduced version of it. Did you help him with the layout of the street and advise him concerning requirements of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan concerning interconnection of streets and suggest to him to do those types of things?
Yes, advising the subdivision regulations. This concept plan, which is a concept plan, not only provides 2 accesses for this property, but it also brings the Industrial Park 3 into compliance, because now it just has the 1. So.
And did you also work with him concerning the set-asides in the area for stormwater drainage?
Yes.
And what your conceptual plan, does it show an area for stormwater management and green space?
There's approximately 11 and a half acres. That's getting a question. I'm trying to turn it ways. There's about 11 and a half acres that will be green space or reserved for detention. It's the same basin, drainage basin that the existing pond is on now.
And will that pond be expanded and will it be developed in order to serve as a stormwater facility? Let's call it that way.
Well, it can. It's a development plan issue. But
Let me raise an issue right quick. We're really discussing a concept plan which would be detailed as part of the development plan that this commission will.
Play the crowd here because they have concerns about water.
The crowd does not have a vote.
Okay. All right, well, then
So
I'll get off of that.
you need to present to us the evidence that supports the need for a change in zone map that supports the property. Please, sir.
Are you familiar with the presently adopted comprehensive plan of the Franklin County Planning Commission?
I looked over the comprehensive plan.
And have you seen the map, future land use map? And is this proposal, zoning proposal, within the, is the use of this property contained in this application consistent with the future land use map of Franklin County?
By my interpretation of this.
Is it also consistent with the goals and the policies? Not 100%, but as a whole.
I think it addresses the vision that the comprehensive plan is supposed to be making.
That's all I have.
Any commissioner with a question for the engineer?
No, sir.
Mr. Layson. Seeing none, hearing none. Are there members of the audience that have a question? Mr. Layson. Seeing none, hearing none.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Evan Goddard. Okay, Mr. Layson, you did the survey for the property initially, correct?
No.
No? Okay, then my question is invalid. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
May I ask one quick question?
Yes, Ms.
Are
Goddard.
there any provisions in the comprehensive plan that are inconsistent with this development? And to your knowledge?
Are there any provision in the I'm not going to testify that. I'm an expert on the comprehensive plan, so I'm just not going to answer that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lacy.
Mr. Chair, that's the case for the applicant. I have other witnesses I might use in rebuttal.
Call the first.
Please come to the stand, Ms. Schimmeler.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing testimony. I appreciate it. My name is Chris Schimmeler. I live at 660 Mount Vernon Road in Frankfort, Kentucky, and I'm president of Envision Franklin County. Envision Franklin County has worked for 15 years to promote a healthy, beautiful, and thriving community and to encourage development that results in good relationships among people, the land, and future generations. Envision Franklin County opposes the proposed rezoning for the following reasons. 1, the applicant did not follow the proper permitting process prior to starting work on the property. Demolition of the historic home, construction of entrances, land clearing, removal of large trees, all of these actions were undertaken without proper permits or consultations under the cover of the status of agricultural land. Our community cannot afford to condone a renegade approach to land development that disrespects rules and procedures designed to protect the land and ensure that the public's well-being is considered. The application before you might appear to be complete with appropriate sign-offs. However, we urge you not to ignore the context of how this applicant got here. Because what we have is a situation in which the applicant proceeded solely according to his self-interest, opting to ask forgiveness later rather than permission first. This behavior isn't good for anybody. Neighbors were left agonized, the public was endangered on the roadway, property and property values were degraded, and state and county administrators were left to play catch-up. And no one knew what was going on except the developer. Approving this application would condone this behavior and send the wrong signal to other developers. Yes, we need development, but it must be appropriate development and cited appropriately. And everyone must play by the same set of rules. Our community will not see the progress that it could see. Will always be plagued by controversy unless we stand behind the goals and procedures that we have set for ourselves. It is up to you all to set a high standard, and Envision Franklin County urges you to deny the application on these grounds. Number 2, future land use designations in this area were arbitrarily determined and did not consider impacts to the residential neighbors in both Franklin and Woodford counties. Envision Franklin County was involved in the last revision and the last update of the comprehensive plan years ago, and we argued then that the designation was arbitrary. The way the industrial zone or the employment center on your maps was determined was to draw a 3,500-foot radius circle around the interstate interchange. Basically, any property in the circle not already as a housing subdivision was tagged as an employment center or regional retail. However, if you look at the coloring of the properties on your map, there are properties beyond that circle designated as employment center or regional retail for no apparent reason. This property is located wholly outside of that circle, and its designation is arbitrary and creates conflicts with other values recognized by the comprehensive plan, such as preserving natural features, promoting infill, protecting quality of life, and ensuring public safety. A reasoned approach would be to first determine what our industrial needs will be in the future, and then to project how many parcels might be needed to accommodate that growth. After that, it's important to then determine where those areas should be located in our community. Some might be best suited next to the interstate, but there are likely other good sites that should be considered and that should not be arbitrarily determined by a circle. There are road conditions, access to interstate, access to rail or water, and other natural topography features, as well as community concerns and values that should be examined in this process. There may also be infill sites that can be redeveloped rather than sprawling onto green fields with important agricultural and, in this case, historical potential. After sites are determined, types of land uses appropriate to buffer them need to be stipulated. Certainly, residential is not a good match, as in this situation. 3. Finally, should this zone change and draft development plan be accepted, the county should not absorb the street network and the sewers into the county system. It should remain in private hands. We don't need to pay the costs of future maintenance when it serves only this development. You may be thinking that this is counter to the way things are usually done, and you are correct. But we must start taking the costs of new infrastructure and services into account if we want to stay financially solvent into the future. A life cycle cost analysis for the next 40 years should be requested to look at cost versus local tax revenue in order to demonstrate whether we will be losing money with maintenance or whether it will be a break-even proposition. In closing, I ask that the zone change be rejected for the reasons listed above, and that the Planning and Zoning Commission usher in a new era of accountability and rigor when it comes to making decisions about land use. Thank you very much. And I neglected to mention that I have a handout that includes a map of potential infill sites within the city that I will give to your secretary to pass out to you, but it's a map showing infill opportunities. Thank you.
Okay. Now,
Thank you
Ms. Schimmel,
very
if you
much.
will, if you'll stand for just a moment, those commissioners have questions of Ms. Schimmel.
No, thank you for your testimony.
Does staff, Mr.
Ms.
Logan?
Schindler's already told me she wants to get out of here, and I'm not going to be the one that delays her.
I still must ask, does the
We have no
applicant,
questions, Mr. Chairman.
does the applicant have questions? No. Okay. Members of the audience have questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Schimmel.
Thank you.
Call the next.
Continue on that side and then go to the other side. Pretty much.
Finish the four.
I've got a request for a bathroom break down here.
Okay, how many we got left on the floor?
On the floor, if they want to speak, we've got 2.
Okay. So that we can continue to manage this as best we can, we've got 2 additional speakers on the 4
And then we have one that was not
side,
really.
one that's leaning. Then we're gonna take a potty break and come back and hear the approximately 12 to 13 individuals who signed up to speak against this. Okay, so we're gonna do these 2 now.
Julie Stevens, did you have anything to add?
No.
And Terry Bradshaw.
I will try to answer your questions. I didn't know you were going to ask me these, so I was trying to go through my phone to find the answers for you. As far as potential land use, projected land use, I can only project land use by using historical data, and I've been here about 4.5 years. In the 4.5 years I've been here, we've sold 76 acres in the industrial park number 3. We've created about...
Ms. Bradshaw, for the record, who are you with?
I'm sorry,
For the record.
I'm sorry, I'm the president and CEO of the Kentucky Capital Development Corporation, which is the local economic development agency.
Thank you.
So we have sold 76 acres in about the past 4.5 years for industrial use there in Industrial Park 3. We have sold, not we as we didn't own it, but there has been sold another 300 and about 35 to 40 acres of land for industrial warehousing in the county. So you're looking at 100 acres a year really is what we have historically needed for industrial general, which is warehousing and industrial property. And we have, sorry, that was the other question. We have 9 acres that are available at the corner of Georgetown Road and Stedmonton Lane, and we have 6 acres on 421 Chenault Road, and we have 2 small parcels in Industrial Park 3. One is about 2.7 acres and one is about 1.3 acres. We, KCDC, don't own any of that property. We've sold all that we own except for one piece of professional office space back in the back of Industrial Park 3. So publicly owned industrial property, there's none. And privately owned, there's 18 acres that we could actually put something on now. There are a couple of other properties in the county that are zoned industrial, but they don't have sewer, or they have a blue line stream running through the middle of them, so they're industrial, but you can't use them. There's some more AG land that is available, but it's zoned AG, and it is not in the comprehensive plan as future land use. It's rural residential thing for future land use, so. Did I answer all your questions?
You actually answered mine.
That's what I was trying to do.
But there are others.
Actually, I do have one question, Mr. Bradshaw. You spoke about demand, historically 100 acres per year. Is there current demand on the books, looking at Franklin County, that needs this additional acreage?
We do have, so my projects are a little confidential, so I can't really tell you exactly what they are, but we are actually working with a current manufacturer looking for industrial warehousing, and we are also working with a project that would be not a relocation, an additional property of an automotive industry third-tier supplier.
Would these individuals increase the employment base of Franklin County, or is this strictly storage?
No, the automotive industry, the automotive third-tier supplier is proposed 79 jobs, so that would be 79 additional jobs. The the warehousing is, 2 or 3 jobs.
Fair enough.
Are there other commissioners with questions? To Ms. Bradshaw. Staff?
No, sir.
Applicant?
Ms. Bradshaw, there's been a letter included in the package from Danny Wood. Is he the board chair?
Yes.
And have you looked at that letter, considered that letter?
Yes, sir.
Are all the facts stated in that letter true and correct?
Yes, sir.
And what's the position? I think the position of the Kentucky Capital Development Corporation is that this would be a valuable asset for the community.
Yes, sir. Our purpose is always to create jobs and wealth for the community, so yes, that would be our
The members of, okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Bradshaw. What do we have?
That's it, I believe.
Let's ask him and get him off the list.
We've heard from everybody, and one indicated to me, no, he's not, does not respond.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Something's wrong, or is it supposed to shut it down? Yeah.
If I can have your attention, please, we're now going to come out of recess and back into the meeting so that we can conclude the discussion surrounding the request. Madam Secretary, would you call the first individual on the list?
Yes, sir. Susan Goddard.
And as a reminder, please state your name clearly and your address for the record.
Chairman Jackson, commission members, community members, and neighbors, good evening. My name is Susan Goddard. First of all, this document, my statements, and all attachments are respectfully requested to be submitted into the record. Also for the record, and the members of the Duncan Road Hilltop Meadows Association are represented by Attorney Randy Strobo, of Strobo and Barkley of Louisville, as well as the Kentucky Resources Council. For the record, tonight, since there were several items that were entered into the record tonight, such as an updated traffic study, there has been an updated staff report, and the information received tonight about the deeds. And since our side has not, our association nor our attorneys have been able to see this, I am going to officially ask for a postponement so that we may have a chance to review the changes that have been made that we have not been privy to. So that can go into the record. I don't know if you rule upon that right now before
I'm going to refer your inquiry to our legal counsel, and if advised by the legal counsel to stop the meeting for that purpose, I will do so. If not, we will proceed.
I think we should proceed. The individuals who are filing things have every right to file documents that are not, they don't have to be pre-filed with us. We don't have a witness list or document requirement prior to hearing of either side, either party.
Okay, so we're going to proceed.
May I follow up with a question? So there's no notice requirement as to providing an updated staff report or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
However, the commission believes that's a relevant issue. They always can, at their own motion, postpone anything.
Thank you.
Okay. May I distribute some packets that, this is for Mr. Cooney's attorney. Mr. Hewitt, here is your copy, please. And I'm sorry that I'm not allowed to, I was not able to get 2 copies, but Mr. Chairman, this is your copy, and I am submitting this for the official record, and it also has newspaper articles as well in there. Also, for the record, I am submitting, this is the original petition with original signatures in it. We have petitions with 175 signatures. Those are the originals. And I have other copies for members here tonight as well, for Mr. Tierney's. There's yours, Mr. Hewitt.
She's going home Wednesday.
Which we object, Mr. Chairman. Same ground she had, but even worse than this, ours was supplied as a matter of public record. The deed is a public record,
Okay.
I don't know what this, it's all right.
Our response is still the same. We shall proceed.
Amen, brother.
Okay. I thought that petitions were admissible at a public hearing. One thing that I would like to note was regarding the entrances and the draining issues. There is a construction entrance that Mr. Tierney has been using that is in between the industrial park and his property there at 690. And it's hard at this point, since Mr. Tierney owns so many pieces of property within industrial park, and his construction machines and truckloads of dirt and everything go back and forth. One has become synonymous with the other. So I have been in contact with Mr. Brian Eaton of the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. The Transportation Cabinet has the purview of this state road. And Mr. Eaton has told me that Mr. Tierney has not gotten the proper permits for these construction entrance, nor had he gotten the proper permit in order to change the farm entrance. And he had told me that he is only allowed to use farm material or farm equipment coming in and out of that, which there has not. Neighbors could testify that there have been dump trucks and bulldozers and things coming out. And out of the construction entrance, I myself it's right in a curve, and it is creating a hazard. According to Mr. Eaton, he had said, "Thanks again for getting in touch. I will get in touch with Mr. Tierney about the entrance and the drainage issues that have arisen from this site. I have not yet seen any drainage plans for the site, so I am not aware of the final plans, but we will take a look at the existing issues and see what needs to be addressed. There are obviously some issues with the erosion control. And yes, we had previously discussed
KYTC does not currently have any projected plans for widening the Duncan Road to 4 lanes. It may have been listed as an option for a future project, but from what I'm told, there is currently no project widening for Kentucky 1681 Duncan Road. This is in direct, it goes totally against the letter for the development by KCDC as Ms. Bradshaw had testified tonight, because in Mr. Will's letter, it says that from US 60, and I'm paraphrasing, you all will have it in your packets as one of the attachments, but he said that there will be widening for 4 lanes from US 60 all the way to the development. According to the Transportation Cabinet, that is not true. So I'm going to give this back to you because I pulled it out of your packet.
Note by review, objection to reading, rank hearsay from witnesses that are present.
So an email is rank hearsay? From a state official?
Whether or not we're going to make an
Okay.
issue on hearsay, your time is wrapped.
Okay, my time is going out. My husband and I, Tom, have lived at 1300 Duncan Road, Scenic Spring Farm, for over 30 years. Our farm spans 2 counties, Franklin and Woodford, and we pay taxes in both counties. I am a member of the newly formed Duncan Road Hilltop Meadows Association, and our members are from both counties. You see the line for Franklin County crisscrosses back and forth our road and the neighborhood. For 30 years, we have lived there and have gone from being almost a rural residential area, basically one small neighborhood, Mill Creek Park and farms, to having commercial, business, and industrial development on it as well. My neighbors and I have experienced firsthand how each of these developments have greatly increased water runoff and actual road closure, how it has created traffic congestion, backups, and injury accidents, from personal vehicles to large semi-trucks, limousines, and tour buses. You see, Duncan Road, also known as 1681, is part of the scenic byway, and it is on the Bourbon Trail. We have a huge array of travelers from all around the world. I first learned of the sale on the evening of July 17th, 2019, when a neighbor called to tell my husband and I that the for sale sign had taken down and Mr. Tierney had bought the farm, and he owned Red Deer Company and he builds warehouses. On July 18th, I began a series of phone calls. I have the dates listed, to Franklin County Planning and Zoning to see if there were any zone changes, land disturbance permits, or permits for destruction of the house. I asked to speak to Mr. Hewitt, but his phone just rang. I would then call and be connected with Mr. Judah. Meanwhile, word spread quickly throughout our community about Mr. Tierney and his intention on building warehouses in the property. This news, however, was contrary to what he had told my son. Mr. Tierney's own actions were living proof to us as we quickly watched him within days of the sale begin to fill in the front catch basin pond and rip out and grind up the old growth cypress tree that everyone in our area had revered and loved. The picture of the cypress tree is in there. One Millville resident told me every time I had folks in from out of town, I'd have to take them by that old tree. It was old and rare. We loved that tree. It was a real tourist attraction. All we could do was watch as Tierney filled in the pond with dirt, rock, and debris that his dump trucks hauled over from the industrial park, but still no proper permits, no work stop orders, as he quickly changed the topography and the flow of water onto the curve and into the road and into Slickaway Branch. After 2 weeks of me hearing Mr. Judah say that he did not know of any permits or stop work orders and that he'd have to check with Mr. Hewitt, I was fed up. I began at that point to write a letter. I dated August 7th. The letter is dated August 8th, and it was to Houston Wells with Robert Hewitt and Ben Judah copies, and I hand carried the letter to their office. The subject line read, "Open records request, an official complaint against Office of Planning and Zoning for its adherence and oversight of the permit process, record keeping, and messaging to the public." And it also contained my objections to a zone change for 690 Duncan Road. However, that letter did not make it into your packet tonight as objections to this development. 5 days later.
Ms. Goddard?
Yes, sir? Am I over my time?
Yes, ma'am. You're at 7 minutes. We've been very flexible.
Okay. I just had so many materials to hand out to you. I'm sorry.
But Is that material in the packet that you gave
My
us?
statement is in there. I would like to mention that at the Franklin County, there was a September 13th article of the State Journal, Tearing Down Our History by Chris Easterly. And that article, myself, and the developer were discussed at the fiscal court hearing, the fiscal court meeting on September the 13th. Mr. Hewitt and those present discussed him being overworked, understaffed, and not having enough time to cover 200 square miles. Working without, he himself said he was working overtime without pay. He cannot get through his phone calls and emails. So my question is, did lack of staffing affect this project in any way? And I would like for that video of the fiscal court to be made part of the record because of the conversation regarding this development and me and everything.
Okay. Now, I must insist.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
May I say one or two more things? Please?
Well, we've gone far beyond the time.
Okay.
I'm
sorry, but-
I have a concern. She represents our group. She's our neighbor.
Are you signed up?
I don't want to break any laws, but she represents our group.
I understand. Are you signed
I
up?
thought she was
Someone willing to yield time.
Is there someone who's signed to speak, willing to donate to her their time? I see two hands. State your name, please, and we're gonna mark you off the,
My name is Vivian Reardon.
mark her off.
Yes, okay.
You've got Ms. Reardon's time.
Okay, thank you very much. I would also like to state for the record, and this is not in the packet, but that this project made it through the technical review committee and actually got put onto an agenda and got pulled from the agenda, but it passed through the committee with the county line incorrect. And after several months, and this began in September, after several months of contacting and trying to get the county line changed back to where it should be, the Woodford County judge finally had to call and basically say, if you all don't move the line back, we're going to sue. And so we were about to have a real situation with Woodford County because the county planner there had called Mr. Hewitt, Patty Wilson, and had told him at that point to remind him that when you change the county line, it does not stop at the development. It keeps on going. And there will be, a lot of ramifications about taxes and other things on down the road. So you got to get this. And how did it pass through your committee with incorrect acreage, and an incorrect county line?
Once again, I don't doubt anybody's testimony, but I still would like to make it relevant to the zoning. Whether or not there's a dispute over the county line is not part of the zone map amendment tonight. We have no jurisdiction over that whatsoever.
How can you, I'm sorry.
How can we do that? We can't set a county line.
Is your questioning being deducted from her time?
Yes, it is. Because she's already gone double
Please keep
her
going.
time anyway.
Yeah, it was yielded, more time was yielded.
Before that, she went double.
Keep going.
Okay. I would also like to mention that when I called Terry Bradshaw, the president and CEO of Capital Corporation, who oversees the industrial parks, she had told me she was fine with him tearing down the house. And I expressed my concerns, and she also told me that she had reminded him that he is a farm owner and he can do whatever he wants. He can tear down the house, he can tear down the barns if he wants to. I reminded her about the graveyard, etc. But I tried to argue that once Terry told them that he was applying for a zone change, should he not be doing anything to disturb the watershed, the landscape, the house, or the barrier of the trees and the berms as put into place by fiscal court? And I asked about the continued use of the property and the dangerous considerations. And I would like for a county planner to be able to do things like Woodford County for hemp initiatives and agribusinesses and things that could have complemented the farm and complemented the area rather than tear it all down and bulldoze more than an acre as per his application. And the rest of my testimony is there. I appreciate it, and I sure wish I could have said more, but.
Well, but hold on.
Yes, Do you have questions?
Commissioners, questions?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Thank you.
The staff have questions. I'm sorry, Ms. Goddard.
I would just like to object to the hearsay provided by Ms. Goddard in her testimony.
Duly noted. Does the applicant,
I have no questions for Ms. Goddard, but I would renew my continuing objection to the package of materials that she submitted, and also to the continuing hearsay she presented here tonight.
thank you, sir. I see no hands from the public, so call the next.
Evan Goddard.
Hello. Thank you all for having me here tonight, having us all here tonight, I should say. So I get a little bit nervous. So y'all ever get nervous up here a little bit? Okay, so I'll keep going. My name is Evan Goddard. I live at 1310 Duncan Road, directly adjacent to 690 Duncan Road, the property in question. I was born and raised on Scenic Spring Farm. Therefore, I have known the Blanton Crutcher, or Tyranny Farms, all of my life. In fact, I love this land so much that in 2016, my wife Hillary and I decided to plant roots and build our forever home right there on the farm. We had our son Emmett in September of 2017, and we're absolutely loving our little piece of heaven until last July, when I noticed a bright orange flag on a large stake outside of my bedroom window. The farm next door had been sold. What was to become of this beautiful farm with its historic Victorian-era estate? Immediately, I dove into detective mode, a frantic attempt to find out all I could of the purchase. I contacted every number in front of me until I finally came across Mr. Tierney himself. So I called Mr. Tierney and asked, "What are your plans for the farm? Should I be worried?" "Not to worry," he replied. "You probably won't even know we're here for another 15 years at least." 2 weeks later, he tore down the Blanton Crutcher home, leaving in his place a plume of smoke that I can only assume was comprised of lead-based paint and asbestos contaminants from the over 200 years of renovations on the home. These two hazardous materials, as you may know, were common in construction until 1978, when they were outlawed due to their toxicity. There has also been no cleanup or removal of this demolition. The house still stands there in rubble. This pile of rubble is seemingly thrown in my face every time I glance outside. So let me put this simply, Mr. Tierney. We know you're here. Later, it was discovered that this nationally registered historic mansion was torn down without even a demolition permit. I think it's been discussed a few times tonight. Please look it up. Then the trees began tumbling down, daily and hourly. My wife works from home while also watching over our toddler and pregnant with baby number 2. She's a miracle worker, that's for sure. But the only problem is I'm now getting daily stress calls and texts about how loud Mr. Tierney's demolition is. The boisterous tree trimming excavator revs up about 8:30 every morning, prompting my son to also wake up to this reverberating machinery, which adds to the stress load on my pregnant wife. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I do know that stress is not recommended during gestation. Let's fast forward to nighttime. I can tell you with absolute honesty that the aerial map you've been provided is not an accurate representation of the land as it lies currently. For example, he has already added part of the road at both ends of the farm. But most importantly, he has already taken out nearly all of the existing fence and tree lines, making the light and noise pollution nearly unbearable for my family and neighbors as well, as you have the pictures. The new warehouses that are there in my face now feature bay doors that face my front porch, giving me the satisfaction of tractor-trailer high beams pulling in and idling engines at any given time of the night. When we moved in, I could count 3 factory lights from the industrial park. How many do I count now, you ask? 32. With the fence lines being torn down, this has opened up the opportunity to trespassers as well. Just a few months ago, I was putting my son to bed when I noticed a car driving around aimlessly in the field next door. It wasn't hard to miss. They were shining their headlights straight through my windows. In all my years on the farm, I've never seen a car driving around in that field at night. So I grabbed my flashlight, went outside to investigate, when suddenly the car stopped, turned to my direction, and proceeded to drive all the way up to our adjoining border fence. I called out to ask if I could help them, but the only response provided to me were a set of high beams glaring menacingly directly upon me. This is the first and only time I have felt threatened in my own home. I called Mr. Tierney straight away, to which he replied it was probably just one of his boys. So is this what I'm to expect on a Tuesday evening now? But after all, no hard feelings. Let's get to the real issues. There was a gravestone belonging to Miss Elizabeth Minor, a freed slave, that was on the farm next to a tree all my life. We have pictures to prove it. I think everybody here knows about it. The big question I'm concerned with is, where's that headstone now? I noticed from one of your maps, the aerial map does not list it, but the other one does. There's a small square that reads grave site location provided by owner. I have one question that's also gone unanswered for far too long. Has anyone verified where the actual grave site is? We had some commentary on it earlier. Since we see his excavators working daily around that area, don't we as a community deserve to know for a fact that Mr. Tierney is not committing felonies by desecrating her gravesite? We also noticed that on only one site map of the two provided, there's an easement added to the property. So, have any additional traffic studies been conducted for these new roadways, such as the easement? I work right down the street at Monoplace, and sometimes the traffic is backed all the way up to David Toll's Auto Pro, about a half a mile from the traffic light. With the addition of Mill Creek Park and Industrial Park number 3, Duncan Road has become far too congested, not to mention dangerous, and cannot handle additional traffic. I live there. I know you have traffic studies, but I see it every day. I'm telling you, it's dangerous. In the 7 months he's been next door, his company, Red Deer's, already been involved in 2 major traffic incidents that I've personally witnessed on my way to and from work. On one occasion, a dump truck tipped over, spilling its contents onto the roadway. The other incident caused me to be late for work as one of his dump trucks ran into a car in front of Hoover Boulevard. A minor inconvenience for me. However, the woman involved had to be removed using the jaws of life. On other occasions, I've only had to dodge debris from the middle of the roadway at his farm and new building entrances. Although I could stand up here seemingly for hours and discuss how we as a community have all been negatively affected by the increased flooding in the roadways from the over-industrialization of Duncan Road, I will impart with my final point. In an attempt to mitigate some of this noise and light coming from next door, I've estimated I will spend roughly $5,000 in trees alone during this next year. Even if everything goes perfect and none of these trees die, it will be years before they are large enough to disrupt or mitigate any of the noise and light pollution that has been forced upon my family and our neighborhood. Thank you for your time. I pray you will make a decision that isn't going to negatively impact my community and my family for the rest of our lives. Thank you. And I would like to submit this to the record.
Questions from Commissioner?
No, sir, thank you.
Staff? Thank you.
Submit this to the record, please. Thank you very much.
You call the next speaker, please.
I don't want to be an unpopular guy, but I feel compelled to point out that he talked almost 10 minutes, the first witness talked almost 15 minutes.
Yes, sir.
And his testimony was 90% subject matter that we were not even allowed to address. I was pointing that out.
May I point out as well, this is a testimony?
So, again, we're not looking to have an argument. We really want to have a reasonable conversation, and yes, we do know that there are things being said that has no bearing on the subject matter, however.
The guy that's keeping time, 1 minute over, not 10.
Yeah. Who's the next?
Richard Rosen.
My name's Richard Rosen. I live at 417 Walking Street, downtown Frankfort. I've lived here for 10 years. One of the reasons we moved here was the beauty of the bluegrass. And I have family and friends come to visit, which I encourage them to do all the time. I take them through drives out in the country, including the drive on Duncan Road down to Millville, and they all gush at the beauty of the property. Last year in the, last year in the State Journal, I started reading about this development. And as I understand it, Mr. Tierney purchased this property, which was zoned agricultural, and proceeded to tear down the Blanton Crutcher House, which is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Then bulldozed the land, destroyed the cemetery, destroyed trees, changed the drainage pattern of the property. To me, this seems to go against.
Go ahead.
I'm going to wait until you can pay attention.
I'm paying attention. Believe you me.
Pretty audacious of you to do that. You're on the clock, sir. Go ahead.
I'll wait.
Wait all 5 minutes then.
Okay, I will. Do you want public comment or not?
I want you to go ahead and do what you're
All
gonna
right,
do. You
then
got
give-
5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. All right. To me, this activity seems like it goes against the preservation of this beautiful area's cultural history. It was Mr. Tierney's first step in his goal of building storage units on this property. Now, after the damage is done, he requests a zoning change from agricultural to industrial. My comment to you is, it seems to me like the process to convert scenic land into industrial usage is flawed, okay? I think it needs to be revised so that you have clear vision of what's going to become of these properties before the destruction begins. I would ask you to go back and review your processes and see if some changes aren't in order. Second, I think there's an investigation needed to see if there are individuals who are making false statements so as to encourage this type of development, such as the road is scheduled to become 4-lane when in fact it isn't. And last, I would request that this zoning change be denied so that it sends a message to future developers that this type of behavior is not encouraged. Thank you.
If you will, sir, we need to see if there are questions. Does any commissioner have a question of Mr. Rosen?
No.
Staff?
No, sir.
I have but one comment, sir. The commission will begin its process of updating its comprehensive plan within the next 60 days, and you will be given plenty of opportunity to make suggestions as to how that process might be improved.
Okay, thank you, sir. And also thank you for the way you run this meeting. I think you do an excellent job.
Thank you. All the next one.
Tom Goddard.
Chairman Jackson, members of this commission, I truly appreciate you giving me this opportunity to talk to you. My name is Tom Goddard. My address is Scenic Spring Farm, 1300 Duncan Road, Frankfort, Kentucky, and my wife Susan and I have lived on this farm for over 30 years. The Scenic Spring Farm is located in Franklin and Woodford County. Our farm and the 85-acre tract that is requesting a zone change border each other. We're next door neighbors. Since acquiring the 85-acre tract, which is currently zoned agricultural, Tierney Storage LLC has been removing almost all the trees from this land. It used to be a beautiful farm in Franklin and Woodford County, but not now. He has a specialized machine that literally grinds down a live standing tree in minutes, leaving behind only a pile of sawdust. He also uses a large bulldozer to topple over multiple groups of trees at once. Excuse me. The northern and eastern boundary of his farm borders Industrial Park Number 3. He has removed all the trees that formed a transitional area, industry to farmland, along this entire boundary with the Industrial Park Number 3. Now the Industrial Park Number 3 is fully visible from our farm and also by our neighbors along Duncan Road. By day, there is now an unobstructed view of all the big box industrial buildings, and by night, bright security lights, entrance lights, and dock lights from the big box buildings now shine across our farm and our neighbors on Duncan Road. This transitional area is gone. I looked at the proposed development map and saw that very few of these border trees were in the way of any buildings he proposes, but he cut them all down anyway. I am at a loss as to why he has created a clear and unobstructed view of Industrial Park Number 3 for all of us to see. Page 4 of 18, which you all have in the Franklin County Urban Use Plan, states General Guideline Number 5. I quote, Larger sites with extra landscaping should be used to provide a transitional area. Tierney Storage is building a 112 square foot warehouse in the Industrial Park 3 near its entrance. For water runoff, he has dug a big drainage ditch at the back of this warehouse that leaves the Park 3 property and goes across a corner of this 85-acre tract. After a downhill drop, the ditch, which is about 8 feet wide and 8 feet deep, runs directly into a small single culvert that goes under Duncan Road. From there, the water goes into a stream known as Slickaway that runs parallel to Duncan Road toward the US 60 intersection. During heavy rain, Slickaway floods the Mill Creek Park entrance that is about 150 yards down the road from this new warehouse water runoff ditch. At the Mill Creek Park entrance, Slickaway floods out of its banks and onto Duncan Road. It goes underwater and closes a couple of times a year. The road flooding began about 30 years ago when Mill Creek Park was developed. Nothing has ever been done to remedy this, and it is still a recurring problem. On October 31st, 2019, there was a heavy downpour of around 3 inches of rainfall in about as many hours. Stormwater came rushing down that big new drainage ditch from the 112,000 square foot warehouse and immediately overwhelmed that small single culvert. Duncan Road flooded over at the entrance to the 85-acre tract where this culvert is located. On the same day, Slickaway flooded over at the road of Mill Creek Park, causing that road to close. October 31st, 2019 marks the date when Duncan Road now began to flood over in 2 places when heavy rains occur. The Frankfort Plant Board substation that supplies power to the Industrial Park 3 is located less than 50 feet away from this small culvert.
Mr. Goddard, your time has expired.
My neighbor left, and he gave me his time. Yeah, Jack has gave me his time. Do you remember the Jack? Do you have Jack on there?
No, I don't have a jack.
Is there, well, but if he's not signed on my paper, he doesn't have any time to give. Is there someone else who wants to contribute their time to Mr. Goddard? If not, sir, we'll accept.
Well, I timed this and was reading it fast, and when I did it earlier, it was 8.5 minutes. And I'm reading it real fast, so if you could just give me just a few more minutes, I'm almost finished. And I have edited portions to make it go quicker. I beg the courtesy of the chairman.
Go ahead.
I did a web search for warehouse jobs, Frankfort, Kentucky. The employment site ZipRecruiter.com returned over 246 warehouse jobs available in the Frankfort area. The other job search sites together report hundreds of warehouse jobs for warehouses in our area that are already built and open for business right now. The Frankfort factories Monoplast and Topi are constantly airing television commercials asking for people to hire. Do not be under the illusion that approving a rezone permit will create more jobs for Franklin County. Hundreds of warehouse jobs are already here right now and are not filled. Refuse a rezone for even more development because we need time to repair the damage that past development has already caused. Frankfort Planning and Zoning needs more time and people to be able to properly handle permit requests. We need time to stop the flooding of Duncan Road. We need time to repair and improve Duncan Road. We need time to prevent more potential flooding from the current industrial park at the top of the watershed that flows into Millville. We need time to evaluate additional flooding from this 85-acre tract that is also at the top of the watershed. We need time to restore the Industrial Park 3 transitional buffer area that has been destroyed. We need time to repair the damage already done to create a system that future development is performed within the standards set forth by the Franklin County Urban Land Use Plan. I agree with everything that Susan Goddard said and that Evan Goddard said, and I have a printed copy of this presentation and ask that this be submitted into the record of this public hearing. Thank you for the extra time.
Okay. If you will, sir.
I'll take questions.
Are there questions by the commission?
Thank you.
Mr. Goddard?
Yes.
One quick question. We've heard to a number of times, and I believe your son did as well, the transition that has been removed from,
Yes, sir.
has it been removed from the existing industrial 3, or has it been removed from the current plat that we are looking at?
Both. The industrial 3 border had a beautiful transition of trees that blocked all the lights that everybody's been talking about. And it blocked all the buildings, and it was visible from Duncan Road. And the neighbors of Duncan Road, have been complaining about it. And so that was a natural transition area that's outlined in the Franklin County Urban Code that was removed by Mr. Tierney.
I refute that, gentleman. That tree line is all still in place.
Sir? Sir?
Once again, the existence of the tree line really is not.
I understand that, but I also don't want there to be a side debate.
Yes, sir.
In our meeting. And we're being as lenient as we possibly can. Outbursts are not appreciated. I just,
Who we got next?
but if you will.
Well, I can just address that.
Responding to
that
the
regardless
commissioner's
of what
question.
has been said, my first person witness testimony is in July, or in the last 6 months, I'm steadily seeing an increase of the warehouses. Of course, fall came and the trees left, and I'm used to 30 years, I've seen it. But now all the trees are leaving. He's got this machine that is an air-conditioned cab, and it's 2 or 3 stories high on a boom, and the attachment is the size of a small pickup truck bed. And it's full of whirring, buzzing steel teeth. And the operator just sits in his air-conditioned cab and methodically removes branch after branch until the tree comes down with a main trunk and there's a pile of sawdust left. And he says he hasn't removed those trees. Well, then why do I look out there and see that the trees are gone?
Okay.
Because they're gone.
Now,
They're gone forever.
Has he responded to your question?
Thank you, Mr. Goddard.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Any questions?
Okay.
C.L. Watts.
Well, wait a minute.
Excuse me.
Does staff have a question?
No,
And does the applicant have a question? Okay, call the next.
C.L. Watts.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly appreciate this opportunity. Board, I appreciate your indulgence. My name is C.L. Watts. I'm a magistrate in Woodford County. I live in the Millville area at 74 Hippie A.G. Road. In the interest of time, what I wish to do is my judge, James Cave, has submitted a letter, and I'd like to read that into the record. And I pretty much agree with what he has said. Dear Frankfort/Franklin County Planning Commission, please accept this letter for the record at the above referenced public hearing. Woodford County shares our boundaries with Franklin County in the area of the proposed zone change, and we feel we have a vested interest in a close connection with Franklin County. Woodford County recognizes and appreciates Franklin County's sovereignty and for the people of Franklin County to control their own land use. We also understand that industry and development are important aspects of a county's growth and important to your local economy. As neighbors of the proposed development, there are some potential adverse side effects and concerns that we have on our side of the county line. The first concern is road safety from increased industrial traffic on Duncan Road KY 1681, which is part of the scenic byway and the Bourbon Trail. Duncan Road sees traffic from tourists, business customers, cyclists, bikers, marathon runners, and local residential traffic. Neighbors in the area have reported high water, mud, and debris on the road, and other water runoff situations that create new potential hazards on the roadway. The second concern is related to the water drainage and runoff. The topographical and elevation of the area create a situation of water runoff that could have wide-range consequences on the Woodford County side of the county line. Storm water already runs down Duncan Hill and through the area. The backside of the proposed development will cause water runoff to potentially increase, crossing several area farms, across natural springs, then runoff downhill into the Millville community near the Castle Key Distillery. Castle Key has already experienced flooding from storm water, and we are concerned about more flooding water damage and runoff as a result of the proposed amendment and development. Finally, given the increased water runoff in generally, we are also concerned about any environmental hazards and other pollutants, whether it be to our watersheds, soil, or air. Some neighbors have concerns, contacted my office about noise and light nuisance resulting from the proposed development. On behalf of Woodford County, we would like for the Commission to take these concerns under consideration when making the decision to amend the zoning of this area. Thank you for your time and concerns. I would just like to add that I'm very familiar with this zone request. I'm a lifelong resident of the Millville area, and we partner with Franklin County. 90% of the people that use Duncan Road are from the Millville area, which means they come out of Woodford County and up and they hit the top of the hill, which is what we refer to it as. They buy your gasoline, they eat your food, stay all night at your places, and they spend their money in Franklin County. This is an area, and I've spoke to Robert about it, the Duncan Road aspect is going to have to, at some time, have some attention pertaining to flooding. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's a new one for an elected official, I'll tell you that.
If you would stand for questions,
Sure.
please.
Sure.
Does any commissioner have a question? Not staff?
Do you have a copy of that for the record?
Yeah, I'm going to get it to you. I do have a question if possible.
Okay.
Is it too late?
No.
Okay, I'd like to ask Mr. Attorney, do you have a plan for the 17 acres remaining on the development of Woodford County?
They will remain agricultural.
Thank you, sir.
Remain agricultural.
So if you'll give the letter to the secretary here, sir. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question of him?
You can ask a question of him, yes, ma'am.
Squire Watts, have you ever personally witnessed or heard sounds coming from the current industrial park to be at a high decibel rate or obnoxious in any way?
Want me to answer?
Please.
Yes, I have.
To your knowledge, have they done anything to correct that? And do you remember the date? Would it be approximately 2015 since residents have been dealing with this issue?
I will testify that it's been over a couple of years. I would be hard pressed to come up with even a year.
I thank you.
Thank you. Call the next witness, please.
Brett Connors.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brett Connors. I didn't really prepare a speech, but I'll kind of just walk through my overall archetypes. To start, I do work for Castle and Key in Millville, Kentucky, and as a part of that project, I've been very instrumental in founding and being the author of our National Register application. So to start with that tone setting, I think it's important as we don't evaluate this in the simple mindset of anecdotes, but rather morally and ethically, what do we want the tableau of Frankfort to look like? And I don't say that just as a representative of the facility that's in Frankfort. I also say that as a citizen of Frankfort after moving here about a year ago. And I think the important part of this context is the complete indifference to the historic architecture that was on the facility is both deplorable and inconsistent with the heritage and the appreciation of our state's past. And when you look at what we've had to achieve on our own facility, we were told in much the same way to remove and destroy a lot of our structures. Yet we opted to be better citizens of the state of Kentucky and both representatives of Frankfort and Woodford County by doing our due diligence to both economically invest in the sector with both viability and determination that regardless of fiscal means, it improves the community as a whole. So not only was removing a facility that was originally constructed in the 1790s by Carter Bland unfortunate, it was by definition their choice. And I think it's hard for me to agree to that as a personal statement, but it's accurate. It's an agricultural property. They're more and well within their ability to remove that structure from site. Is it the right thing to do? Absolutely not. I think it's an absolute travesty in a lot of manners. But that leads us to the next connotation, which is that the National Park Service published, I can never remember the exact title of this document, a really wonderful structure. It's called Cultural Landscapes, Rural History Districts in the National Park System. And what this document leads to is that it's not specifically the architecture that's intrinsic and imperative in National Register applications, it's also the surrounding environment that that facility is located in. With this farm in particular being one of the last exhibits of the jet sector of Kentucky's wonderful agricultural heritage. The interesting part about that document as well is it lists three really primary archetypes for importance. I always have to write these down, which is landscape spatial organization, land use categories and activities, and circulation networks. The interesting aspect of this property is it's in connotation for all three. Because the reality is in spatial organization, the agricultural process in this region and the development of the jet train depot where they extended the Louisville-Nashville Railroad in the late 1870s into the sector was imperative for creating a vibrancy of agricultural and ecological human interaction in the area, which is paramount and almost unprecedented in this sector. Following that in, you also have categories of land use, and this has historically been a farm that was in fact agriculturally active for well over 180 years. So to lose that from our heritage is not ideal. Then you get into circulation networks. This is the way people move around. We've talked about the different creek access, but also the railroad that exhibited in this region, including Duncan in its own right. And the pathways that lead through this sector are stunning. And it's weird, when you think of architecture in the National Register, we always think of buildings. The non-structures are really the harder part to idealize. It's the unknown, it's the non-visual, it's the non-assertive. You know, when you're traveling a pathway, man made that. That is a human creation for ecological geographic development. So to have a disassociation with that and allow it to be converted from an aesthetic of beauty into one of function is short-sighted and realistically not economically logical either. You know, we talk about job creation and development, but I do have a firm belief that this would hurt the aesthetic tourism perspective in the region. You know, if you've ever had the opportunity to drive down New Cut or Grassy Springs or even down Duncan, I think it's inaccurate to state that that aesthetic isn't a driving factor with tourism in the sector as well. You know, so unless they can prove they create more jobs, create more tourism dollars than either Woodford Reserve or Castle Key, we probably need to reassess our economic assumption of this property, truthfully. And you also have to deal with the fact that we want to talk about economic impact. Everyone in this room behind me has a much bigger skin in the game than I do. I live on Shelby. I can't see this from my house. I'm going to pass it every day. That's going to suck. But if we want to talk about property value drops, we're looking at economic benefit in the sector. Everyone behind me just lost money off their houses. Not ideal either for Frankfort. And finally, more on an anecdotal statement, if Frankfort does seek to achieve the further progress of bringing in new citizenship, new people, of a younger generation that are looking to economically benefit the sector. Removing historic agricultural sectors is the absolute opposite of that. I didn't move to Frankfort because it was cheaper. We bought an old house that's going to take a ton of work. We bought an old house specifically because of my family's appreciation for historic preservation. And Frankfort has such a vibrancy of that, so where do you stop? You know, at what point do we allow this to cascade to a juncture where developers who don't live in Frankfort, who have no skin in the game, who are only siphoning economic benefit from the sector, when do we intervene and prevent them from having more of a concern about the environment and the communities we live in and less about the facilities that we build? But,
Okay,
any questions?
Mr. Connors, we have given you a minute and a half beyond
Absolutely
the
appreciate
time
it.
allotted, and we would have to respectfully request.
Oh, I'm cool. No, any questions? It's totally up to you.
Commissioners have questions?
Thank you.
Staff have questions?
None.
Thank you, sir.
Call the next one.
Jane Julian.
You did.
You know that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, before we get started tonight, I'd like to say, I did not know that we were gonna have time limits on speaking at this hearing, so I have a 4-page, document here that I'd like to read into the record. So if you all and, Mr. Logan could give me time to read 4 pages, I would greatly appreciate it.
As you read, Ms. Julian, we will seriously consider your request.
Mr. Logan, you agree with that?
I'm sorry, Ms. Julian, all I do is I'm keeping good time. I don't get to decide whether it's a...
Yes, I would respectfully ask you to take into consideration that I did not know we were going to have a time.
Ms. Julian, I would take into consideration anything you ask, and I'll be keeping good time.
Thank you very much. Let me give out copies of the handout. Let's see, there's 6, 7 people here, people pass it on. And Ms. McDonald, would you like to, I'd like very much to give you copies for the members who are not here tonight, so they can have a copy. There are 5 members not here tonight.
Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, does anybody else want a copy of that?
If I read that, I will have to have sleeping pills.
That's awesome.
She can send it away. Consider it for the record. She doesn't have to read it.
She's got that big farm out there all over the road, right across from. It's past my time to take my heart meds from Frankfort Game Farm. On the left up on the hill that runs all the way to US 6. I mean, Interstate.
Because I stopped at it 2 minutes.
Now, my 5 minutes are starting. Okay.
Well, actually, it started a little bit back, but keep
okay.
going.
You just went across the Game Farm.
Okay.
Rock wall.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, planning staff, thank you for your time and attention tonight. I'm Jane Julian, and I live at 1915 Louisville Road. I'm also a member of Envision Franklin County, a local volunteer organization that works on issues of land use and planning and zoning in Franklin County. I'm here tonight to speak to items that our comprehensive plan addresses, and I hope you all can use some of these items when you meet next to record findings of fact. In the comprehensive plan, section 2, called Land Resource Analysis, pages 12 to 14, the plan notes that there are currently more than 600 acres zoned for industrial development. The plan also notes that, quote, there's also enough commercial commercially and industrial zoned land to accommodate more than 5 times the projected demand for each use. Let's move on to section 3, called Goals and Policies of the Comprehensive Plan, pages 15 to 22. Page 15 states that the goals and policies embody the idea that growth is healthy but should be managed for the community good. The goals and policies reflect a concern about the pattern of development and concern about urban sprawl. In our search for findings of fact, let's go through the 7 goals and their policies quickly. Goal 1, grow by design. Policy 3, develop standards that require the developer to provide for the increased costs in providing public services for the new development as appropriate. The public services may include, but not be limited to, water, sewer, schools, transportation, emergency services, and parks as appropriate. And let me pause here to say that developers will install services such as a street network and sewers, and then turn them over to the county for the citizens to maintain forever. These services should remain in private hands so that the taxpayers don't get saddled with the burden of extra taxes. Policy 5, continue the enforcement of stormwater regulations to minimize runoff from new developments. Policy 6, provide overlays within the city and county that identify aspects of the landscape that are of cultural, ecological, and historical significance. For example, mature woodlands, old railroad tracks, stone walls, historic buildings, wetlands, steep slopes, etc. Policy 9, encourage the redevelopment of brownfield and grayfield properties and the reuse of vacant, underutilized existing industrial or commercial buildings. It appears that policies 3, 5, 6, and 9 do not support the application. Goal 2, distinguish town and country identity. Policy 3, define infill development as it relates to development in the urban areas of Frankfort, recognizing that infill development may not be an appropriate term for development that may occur in the unincorporated portions of Franklin County. Policy 5, encourage the preservation of existing farms and rural lands outside of existing and planned urban areas. Policy 7, encourage rural land use outside of the urban growth area. Policy 8, avoid and contain urban sprawl to preserve the distinction between the rural landscape and urban suburban environment. It appears that policies 3, 5, 7, and 8 do not support this application. Goal number 3, use infrastructure as a planning tool. Policy 1, develop a capital improvements plan as a means of coordinating public services and utilities, infrastructure improvements, and development, including pedestrian ways, bikeways, public transit, etc. Policy 4, plan and build a safe and efficient transportation system through access management, required roadway interconnections, traffic systems management, development impact analysis, transit, sidewalks, and bicycle facilities. It appears that policies 1 and 4 do not support this application. Goal 5, protect environmental health. Policy 1, preserve streams and drainage ways to manage stormwater runoff, prevent flooding, or to create a system of greenways. Policy 5, encourage new development to be designed in a manner that preserves the natural topography and other natural features such as trees, woodlands, wildlife, rare species, streams, ponds, and drainage ways. It appears that policies 1 and 5 do not support this application. Goal 6, preserving existing neighborhoods. Policy 3, promote maintenance of existing structures and provide incentives for the rehabilitation of deteriorating structures. Policy 5, preserve historic buildings and neighborhoods to maintain community character. It appears that policies 3 and 5 do not support this application. Goal 7, enhance community quality and character. Policy 2, support and enhance the rural gateways into the community by preserving their natural scenic beauty. Policy 3, improve standards for site design, including trees and other landscaping, access management, signage, and other design components. Policy 6, encourage small area overlay plans for high priority areas, including for Holmes Street, 2nd Street, East Main Street, Versailles Road, Benson Valley, Bridgeport, at Bell Point, Peaks Mill, Louisville Road, and US 127 North and South corridors. It appears that policies 2, 3, and 6 do not support this application. Okay, enough of goals and policies. Let's move on to Section 4 of the Comprehensive Plan, called the Land Use Plan, which is pages 23 to 45 in the comp plan. Section 4, Land Use Plan, begins by saying, quote, "It has been common practice in the past to assign each property in the community with a very specific land use. This plan recognizes that zoning is the more appropriate tool suited for property-specific regulations," end quote. This opening statement is followed by development guidelines for each land use category that the city and county provide. Let's skip to page 39, where the land use category describes employment center. Employment center. This description says that office employment and light industrial uses can and are being developed in a way that still provides a diverse economic base while blending in with residential and commercial areas. Employment centers are areas that encompass primarily office, warehousing, and light manufacturing areas. The guidelines for this land use category state the following. Guideline 4. Where infill development occurs, the density and character of the development should reflect the existing uses that surround the proposed site. From the applicant's map, and if you drive out Duncan Road, it appears that the subject property is surrounded on 2 sides by open land and a small subdivision. Infill is a term that usually describes an area where dense development has leapfrogged over open space. This makes me think that in this application, the term infill needs to be looked at more closely and defined more clearly. The last land use category that I'll talk about is industrial. Page 41 in the comprehensive plan describes this zoning thusly. Industrial, quote, "Industrial uses include establishments that involve heavy manufacturing, processing, assembling, and/or outdoor storage, which are characterized by potential nuisance factors such as noise, vibration, odor, air emissions, etc. This land use category should be located with access to major thoroughfares and/or railroads and not adjacent to residential areas." The guidelines for this land use category state the following. Guideline 1. New industrial development should be placed in areas where there is a minimal impact on residential uses and the natural environment. Guideline 5. Where infill development occurs, the intensity and character of the development should reflect the existing uses that surround the proposed site. I find that land use categories and zoning categories are confusing when it comes to talking about light manufacturing, employment center, and industrial. For example, on pages 39-42 of the comprehensive plan, employment center includes light manufacturing, but industrial does not. I would like to have this application include a clarification about what the term industrial or industrial general includes. In sum, I do not think that the proposed zone change is appropriate, and I ask you all to reject this application. Thank you very much.
questions by commissioners?
Well, thank you, Ms. Julian.
Thank you.
Questions by staff? Applicant? Audience? No? Thank you, Ms. Julia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Logan. I know I took
Who's next?
Will
That's it.
Arvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Will Arvin. I'm an owner of Castle and Key Distillery that's been referenced earlier tonight. And I'd like to enter a letter to you all into the record, and I'll read it to you here. And again, thank you for your time and consideration tonight. I think I can hit your time limit. To the members of the Franklin County Planning Commission, I am writing to you on behalf of Peristyle LLC, DBA Castle and Key Distillery, which is located at 4445 McCracken Pike, Frankfort, Kentucky. Castle and Key opposes the requested zone change request filed to change the zoning for the property located at 690 Duncan Road from an AG zone to an IG zone. The basis for the opposition is as follows. The agricultural property under consideration is located at the top of a mountain ridge that lies above McCracken Pike. The stormwater drainage from the property under consideration flows down the mountainside and into catch basins and ravines that flow directly onto the Castle and Key grounds. The velocity of these watershed flows leading to Castle and Key will be significantly increased by industrial development on the property under consideration, leading to a risk of catastrophic flooding at Castle and Key. Castle and Key is now an operating distillery, warehousing facility, and tourism venue. Any potential for flooding of this facility puts our business operation in grave jeopardy. 2, the agricultural property under consideration is historic and agricultural in nature and constitutes an important sector of the Duncan Road corridor leading to McCracken Pike, upon which lies numerous historic distilleries, each of which receives tens of thousands of tourist visitors per year. The McCracken Pike is becoming renowned worldwide as the Napa Valley of Kentucky. The Duncan Road corridor is the primary thoroughfare for the tourist visitors to access these distilleries. A zone change from AG to IG at the property under consideration would greatly diminish this historic and aesthetic character of the entire Duncan Road corridor and reduce tourist attraction to an otherwise historic corridor. 3, the current AG zoning for the property under consideration is appropriate and is surrounded on, I believe, all sides except for one by agricultural land or residential land. 4, there have been no major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the Duncan Road corridor which have substantially altered the basic character of the Duncan Road corridor. To the contrary, a zone change of the property under consideration from AG to IG would substantially alter the basic character of the Duncan Road corridor, which is a major corridor for Kentucky's bourbon tourism. 5, the current AG zoning is in agreement with the comprehensive plan adopted by the Commission because the AG zoning helps to protect the McCracken Pike tourism corridor, prevents downstream and downgrade properties from flooding, and protects the environmental integrity of an already stressed area of Franklin County. In further support of the opposition, Castle and Key submits the following facts. Castle and Key was purchased in 2014 by the current owners. At the time of purchase, the historic improvements on the property were in ruin and almost unsalvageable. The property had been developed in 1887 by Colonel Edmund Haynes Taylor Jr. In Colonel Taylor's day, the property was the prized destination of the bourbon distillery world, attracting visitors from around the globe. Castle and Key then, the old Taylor Distillery, actually was the birthplace of bourbon tourism and did so with great success and with great bourbon as well. Today, the owners have invested millions of dollars to rehabilitate the site and bring the distillery and its historic grounds back to life. Once again, the old Taylor Distillery, now Castle and Key, is currently attracting thousands of tourists each year and producing great bourbon and rye whiskeys. Castle and Key is heavily dependent upon its site for tourism and hospitality services to sustain its business model. There are additional distilleries in the McCracken Pike area that also depend on bourbon tourism to support their business model. On August the 11th, 2018, a sudden rainstorm resulted in flooding of the Castle and Key Distillery building. The flooding, interestingly, did not occur from the waters of Glens Creek, which flows through the property, but in fact occurred from the flooding in the stormwater drainage, which originated from the top of Duncan Road on and near the property under consideration. Castle and Key sustained over $1 million in flood damage to its property as a direct and proximate result of the stormwater drainage from the mountainside. In addition, the stormwater flooding has become a bigger problem on Duncan Road with any amount of substantial rainfall in the area. Castle and Key itself cannot afford to suffer a similar flood on its premises and is extremely concerned that industrial development at the headwaters at the top of Duncan Road will further exacerbate the potential for future flood events flowing down the mountain shed onto Castle and Key's property. This isn't in my letter, but also the other houses and structures and properties along Glens Creek and in the Millville Valley. 3, the historic house that was erected in 1796, about which we've had a lot of discussion tonight, on the property that is under consideration is historic. The farm was previously known as the Blanton Crutcher Farm. The old house was occupied by Carter Blanton, who we believe to be a relative of the renowned Colonel Albert B. Blanton, the namesake for Blanton's Bourbon. Unfortunately, that home has been torn down and demolished by the applicant. Thank you for your consideration of these facts, and Castle and Key urges that you keep the property under consideration zoned AG as it is currently zoned. Thank you.
Commissioners have questions?
No, sir, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Staff? Applicant?
I'm just curious, your facility is located in Woodford County,
It is.
and how is it zoned?
It is an industrial zone, but it was zoned that way
Did you get it zoned?
No, sir.
You didn't know,
No,
did
sir.
you do any zoning at all on it?
No, sir. It had that, I
And
think
how
it
much
was
of the
zoned that way
subject
for
property
years.
we're talking about tonight drains?
I beg your pardon?
How much of the subject property that we're talking about tonight drains towards Woodford County? How many acres?
Well, the property you're talking about regarding, right?
How many acres of the 98 acres in Franklin County flow towards your property in Woodford County?
I couldn't answer that with specificity. That's
Shouldn't your water engineer
know that? Somewhat of a technical question.
Sir?
Yes.
I just need
I'm sorry.
him to ask the questions and him to answer,
Yeah.
please.
The only reason, I'm sure you looked at the plan, or the conceptual plan.
Yes, sir.
And you notice there's a large lake on it.
Yes, sir.
You noticed all the testimony tonight about the water flowing towards the intersection, towards the Duncan Road intersection there and the Industrial Park intersection. Wasn't the vast majority of the water flow from this property flowing towards Franklin County and down into the place where the people are talking about tonight?
Actually, it doesn't. And I've for the past 5 years, I've driven that Duncan Road probably 6 or 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And so I've seen the sunshine and the dry weather, and I've seen the rain. And when I've experienced, and this is, I'm not obviously an engineer or an expert in the field, so I'm going off my layman's visual, but I see the water flow right off that farm and right down into the ravine and right down into Glens Creek. It runs parallel all the way down the road. Thank you.
There are no further questions. If you'll give your
Yes, sir.
note to the secretary, please. Thank you. On the next one.
Kim Gearhart.
It'll be next year before she get all that together.
Bless her heart.
Yeah. She earned her $75.
It's true.
What it says right there.
I've lived I'm Kim Gearhart. I live at 1165 Duncan Road. My husband and I have lived out there for more than 20 years. We bought the home because it was out in the country. We lived across from a farm. It had all cattle out there where Monoclast was, across from us it did. Over the years, we've seen change and weren't that worried because it was down at the beginning. The people at the beginning sold off a portion of their farm. But over the years, the traffic has gotten worse and worse. The potholes from the semis running up and down, the noise. We hear beeping even 5:30 in the morning on Sundays you can hear the beeping of the semis backing up. The lighting since Mr. Tierney has bought the place, the trees being taken down, we have gotten more lights shining towards us. And being right on the road, you can see them a lot more. We never used to see this. When we moved out there, you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. But now that more warehouses are being built back in there and trees have been taken down, yes, you can see a lot more. This one is of the new warehouse, which is further down the road from us, and it is just as bright as can be. So it makes me wonder, or even if it goes through, which I'm here to request, please do not change it from agriculture. There's other ways of making money. I know he spent a lot of money on that property. I hear hemp is a good product coming up. Maybe you can start growing hemp on it. I don't know the solution to everything, but I just would like to say that I hope you'll look at what in their page 5 it says about the quality of life. My quality of life has changed since all this has started. Between the lights at night, lighting up everything, the noises. So all of that I think should be put in consideration. I thank you for your time. Thank you. I just fractured my ankle a month ago, and when I came down the first time, I felt pain, so I'm just going to hand it to the ends here.
Well,
one of you.
no ma'am, we need it on this end.
Can you just pass it?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, break it again in front of y'all.
Call the next one right quick.
Mary Canty Hall.
Am I the last?
Yes, ma'am.
Aren't you happy I'm not carrying anything to read off to you? My name is Mary Canty Hall, and I live at 1415 Duncan Road. My family bought their first farm on Duncan Road before the Civil War. And right now there are 4 farms along Duncan Road that have Cantys living there. Not exactly making a living off farming, but they're there. I wanted to just say a few quick items. One of is you're not being paid enough to do this job, if you ask me, based on what I saw is the minutes where they say how much you're getting an hour. So also, as a farmer, I'm quite intrigued by Mr. Tierney's approach to development. He's taken advantage of the rules for farmers to more or less destroy a farm, and now he's asking for a change in the zoning so that he can then follow the rules for zoning. So that's quite interesting approach. I have to remember that if I ever desire to become a developer. But secondly, what I would like to say as someone who's never paid any attention to local government, the process of changing from agricultural to industrial, or whatever you want to call it, is a process that requires that the ordinary citizens have faith that their interests are being followed, that someone cares about all those people in their little houses along Duncan Road, or for that matter, the farmers along Duncan Road. When we see what appears to be strange behavior, when someone comes in and starts building before the change, it makes us suspicious of what's going on. And that's not good for government. We need to have faith in government, that they're following, that they care about the ordinary person, not just the developers or the people who have lots of money. There's a lot of people whose small houses who fear that change in Duncan Road will lead to the destruction of their house if they need to widen it. Those people matter, and just because they can't provide more extra businesses or jobs doesn't mean that they shouldn't be considered the whole process has been very enlightening to me. I kind of relate it to the notion of making sausage. Sometimes you don't want to watch it being made, but I'm asking you to consider very carefully how you can continue to show your trustworthiness in following very carefully the needs of the people along Duncan Road. My great-grandparents used to take Duncan Road from Millville using a horse and carriage to go to church down in Good Shepherd. I always wondered, did it take them like 3 hours to get to Mass? I don't know. But I've been around for a long time, and I understand change is necessary, but change has to be very carefully considered, and everybody's input is needed. And that's about all I got to say.
Commissioners have questions?
Thank you.
Staff? Applicant? Thank you, ma'am. Any more?
No, sir.
Okay, at this point, Chair will entertain a motion, close public hearing, summary of testimony, and tabling the item until the February meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lee.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing, that we take the testimony and have staff produce a summary of it, and we will take action on this at the next public meeting in February.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and properly second. Is there discussion on the motion? Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? Motion carried. Now, before we adjourn, during the interim, while the public hearing will not be reopened, there is an opportunity for the applicant and those of you who have spoken to submit to planning and zoning staff, Mr. Hewitt and his staff, findings of fact that might be placed in the package of the commissioners for consideration as part of the decision-making process at the February meeting. Have I misstated that, Mr. Legal Counsel?
No, both parties can submit proposed findings of fact. I would ask you to set a deadline so that we don't have it submitted 2 days before and have the problem maybe reviewing it.
Staff, since you have to summarize everything and get it back to us, the February meeting is what, the second Thursday of February? When would you prefer to have communication? Where's your map? I mean, yeah.
That would be the 13th.
The 13th, Robert, is
The meeting is on the 13th.
And as my understanding is your packet would go out on the 6th, correct?
The packet goes out on the 6th, so I would request that signings be submitted to my office no later than the 5th.
Of February.
February 5th?
Okay, I'm gonna split the difference with you. Findings should be sent to Mr. Hewitt by January 30th.
January 30th?
January 30th, 2020. That gives staff time to assemble all of the information, put it in the packet, and ensure that it comes to commissioners. And it has to be in the packet to commissioners by the 6th of February. So you give them a week.
Thank you.
Now, is there any further business to come before the commission? If not,
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
Non-debatable? We're done.